Lance and Uni were sort of like that. If you remember in the beginning of 3, Lance was like, hey, look at that guy. He's getting his homecoming. That's going to be me, Noah. Look at that. I'm going to be on that stage with the flute playing. And I'm like, yeah, it sounds fun, Lance.
If Melia's going to come send me off, I'll have my homecoming anyway.
I'll be first in line.
Hello and welcome to the Joystick Drift Podcast, the show where we drift off just as much as a joystick. I'm your host, Nick, and today I'm joined by a special guest, and we're going to be talking about Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Future Redeemed, which is the DLC for the base game. Now, I am going to preface by saying we are going to talk spoilers for the entire Xenoblade franchise. 1, 2, 3, maybe X if it happens to come up, and also Future Redeemed. So if you haven't finished any of those things, then maybe don't watch. But a little later in the episode, we're also going to talk about Tears of the Kingdom, and there will be some story spoilers there, which I will dive into a little bit more on the specifics of that as we get to it, but just as a heads up now, that's what we're going to be talking about. So, as we start off every episode, I want to know our guest, Mr. Nishquik Pops. First of all, thank you for coming on the show to talk Xenoblade. I love Xenoblade.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
I know you love Xenoblade and Zelda,
I love
which is why we're talking about it today. But I want to know, give the people some context. Who are you? Like, what do you do? How'd you get into Xenoblade? How'd you get into Zelda? All that kind of stuff.
So I'm Nishquik from Nishquik Pops. My channel usually covers like all things Nintendo, but I focus on Zelda and Xenoblade right now and other JRPGs. But my Xenoblade, well, okay, let's start like with Zelda. I've been a Zelda fan for more than 10 years. I can go into detail on that later, but with Xenoblade, I am more of a recent fan. And it's funny because Xenoblade is actually, I would say, maybe my second favorite video game series of all time. Wow. And people are always like, oh, you must have been a fan ever since like it came out on the Wii. And I'm like, no, I actually was... I'm a relatively new fan, starting off with Definitive Edition on the Switch, and the reason I love Xenoblade so much is because it has everything I look for in a game. Great gameplay, amazing story, beautiful OST and soundtrack. So all that combined just makes the perfect video game experience for me. But like, I was always recommended Xenoblade by so many people, my cousin, some other friends, and like even when X came out, Xenoblade X on the Wii U, a friend of mine was always like, hey, this game looks so good, I'm gonna try it, maybe you should as well. And I was like, no, I'll just wait for Zelda Wii U because that's what I bought my Wii U for. And then, yeah, the Wii U was not a very good era. I wish I had experienced Xenoblade then, but I'd always heard about Xenoblade. I knew Shulk from Smash and all that. And then I didn't really get into the series until Definitive Edition. It was just history from there. Really, really awesome series.
Yeah, it is truly an amazing series, which is why we're doing another episode on it. If you missed it, for those watching, because I know we've gotten a lot of new people since that episode came out. It was one of the first episodes we did. But fellow co-host Colin and I talked all about Xenoblade 3, which I'm probably going to rehash some of that just because it fits contextually with talking about the DLC. But we did talk about it, so you can go check out that episode if you want, obviously after you finish this one, so that's great. For me, a little bit on my background with Xenoblade, I, like you, just knew Shulk from Smash. I knew he was a blonde guy with a big red sword, and that was about it. And Colin is actually the one who told me, hey, Definitive Edition is out on the Switch, you should play it. And I was like, maybe, I'll think about it. And then I was at Target one day, and I saw that Definitive Edition was on sale for like $40. And I sent him a picture of it, and I said, should I buy this? And he said, yes, absolutely. So I bought it, I played it, and it took me a long time to finish Definitive Edition. I think I started it in May of 2021, and I finished it in July of 2022. And
it took me a while to beat it as well. I took many breaks for other games and all that, yeah.
I took a lot of long breaks, which did not do the game any service because I forgot how the combat system worked. But then I was at that point where you're like so far in the game that it's not teaching you anything anymore because you're supposed to have already known. So the combat got really difficult, and I knew 3 was coming out. I was really excited to play 3. And I just sped run the game. Like, I went in as low level as you possibly could to do the boss fight in that game, and then I finished it, and I was like, all right, done with Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. Now I can play the third one.
What's great is with those games, the gap between easy mode and medium mode and hard mode, they're massive gaps.
Oh, yeah.
Because in the future games like Xenoblade 2 and 3, there were times when I hit a roadblock because a boss would be very tough. And then I switched to easy mode and I beat it in one shot. And I was like, what? Come on. Like, I worked so hard for this and now I'm just like getting like the free pass, but whatever. I want to say one more thing about my journey with Xenoblade because leading up to 3, it was like I had played all of them, but I beat Definitive Edition in like early 2021. And around that time I looked online and I was seeing a lot of the negativity about Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Everyone's like, oh, not a good game, it's annoying, it's lame, it's long,
it's too anime.
It's too anime, the characters are stupid, it's silly, the story is long, the combat is annoying. I could go on and on. I heard that stuff and I was like, dang, this game looks, it sounds like it sucks. And then I like actually watched some reviews of people talking about the games, people I trusted and all that. I went to like some friends who have played them, and some friends have been like, oh no, I stayed away from 2 because I loved 1 so much, I don't want to go near 2. And then other friends were like, 2 was good, it was a really good experience, but it had some like ups and downs along the way. And then I was like, I asked one of my friends, I was like, do these games like connect in any way? Like, is this like a Final Fantasy thing where each of them are separate? And he was like, oh no, you just figured that out yourself. And I was like, oh wait, then that means it does, because like he's not telling me something and he could have just said no. And then I did the most stupid thing ever. I went online and I looked up, how does Xenoblade Chronicles 2 connect to Xenoblade Chronicles 1? Because I was like, I don't think I'll play this game. It looks really stupid and silly or whatever. And then I saw the plot twist of 2. Like, I just read it and I was like, I'm buying this game right now. I immediately bought it after I read that and I was like, I need to play this.
Monolith knows what they're doing with the story.
Yeah. Yeah. And like the thing is, with Xenoblade 2, it was like, I describe it as this. I describe it as an emotional roller coaster, because that game, it starts off amazing, and then it has some rocky moments when it comes to gameplay, pacing of the story, a lot of things. But overall, it is fantastic. And still to this day, it has my favorite ending to any video game ever. And I'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, that's my history with 2, and I love all 3 of the games almost equally, but I feel like I can rank them. But if I had to rank a #1 favorite Xenoblade Chronicles game, it would be Xenoblade 3.
Same.
Yeah, it's great.
I love Xenoblade 3 a lot more than I thought I was going into it. Like, I thought, oh, it's just going to be like, I'm playing it because it's another Xenoblade game, and I enjoyed the story of the first one. And I think as soon as I opened up the game, because one of my biggest gripes with the first game was how they handle the combat. And not necessarily like the real time, but the way you had to scroll across the bar to use your arts. The amount of times I missed arts because I had to go all the way back over, which, you know, maybe I could have organized them differently. Okay, sure, whatever. But the second I started playing 3 and all of the arts were mapped to buttons instead of having to scroll across, I was like, oh, okay, well, that fixed one of my biggest issues with the first game. So this might be a little more entertaining. And I really loved being able to switch what character you're playing without having to go into the menus. Like, all of these things that I thought were kind of clunky in the first game, they
really
fixed
good quality of life stuff.
Yeah, they fixed it in the third game, which dramatically increased my enjoyment of it because I didn't feel like it was a slog. It also helped that I played it essentially in one continuous chunk instead of taking multiple breaks.
Yeah. I did the same thing with breaks in Xenoblade 1. With Xenoblade 2, I went the full-on, like, full length. It took me, like, a month and a half to beat it. And it was tiresome, it was stressful because of the ups and downs, like I said, but it was very rewarding. And I felt the same way about the arts when I played Xenoblade 2, because I saw that the arts were on the face buttons, and I was like, oh, that's genius, why didn't they do that in the first game? And then I was like, oh yeah, it was on the Wii. That's unfortunate.
That makes a lot of sense.
But you know what I did for Xenoblade 1 is I have a third-party Pro Controller, and it has the back bumpers. So I was able to program them to the D-pad, and then I was able to move around and scroll through my arts at the same time. So I was like, yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah. I haven't played 2. I own it. And the reason I haven't played it yet is because I really wanted to get a physical version. Because I'm a real big physical gamer, especially with some of the more, I guess, significant games.
Yeah.
Like, I own every Zelda game that I own it physically. Yeah. I've got every Zelda game on Switch except Cadence of Hyrule physically, because obviously it doesn't have a physical. I have now all 3 of the Xenoblade games physically. I have 1, 2, and 3. So I'll eventually go back and play 2.
Oh no! Please play 2. I really wanna know what you think
I've
about
heard
2.
so many mixed things of like, so bad, it's anime, like the stuff you mentioned before. But then I've also heard people be like, just play it. It's actually not that bad.
No, it's fantastic, because there are times in the game where the story kind of slows down. But I've never seen a game do this, and basically what it does is once you get to the end of the game, you go back and you think about everything that has led you up to that point at the end, and you're like, I needed to go through all of this stuff.
Yeah. I
needed to go through all of this, like, annoying stuff and this confusing stuff to get to where I am now, because it all makes sense. And another thing is, I'm a huge stickler for music in video games. Like, I love JRPGs. Like, the big thing I love about JRPGs are the music, or is the music. And Xenoblade Chronicles 2 has my favorite video game soundtrack of any video game ever. And that's even more than 3 and 1. And that's just like personal preference for me. I think 3 has the more like storytelling and cinematic music.
Oh yeah.
But 2 just has like some of the most beautiful video game music I've ever heard. And another thing is like the story is really, really emotional. Like 1 was emotional. You like right when it kicks off, you see Fiora get sliced by Metal Face, and then so many other like really emotional things, like Melia like saying goodbye to her brother, seeing the High Entia turn into Telethia, all that stuff. This Xenoblade 2, I think, has the more emotional moments that hit you like really in the feels, because it's the one game that actually like made me tear up a lot, and I was like, oh, the emotions are getting to me. And like games don't usually do that. Like even like we'll talk about Tears of the Kingdom. I thought I would like feel the feels in Tears of the Kingdom. I did, but not as much as I thought I would, like Xenoblade 2 level, you know? But that's just me. And like my appreciation and my enjoyment for each of these games is different, but it's hard to rank them. But I guess in the end that I kind of have, because I like have a list. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I was the exact same way with 3. Like, I love the soundtrack in the game. I have a YouTube playlist called Xeno Bangers that is all of my favorite tracks from 3, and I'll never forget, and this was one of those gaming experiences that'll just stick with me forever, is it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I was going through chapter 5, and I was like,
that's all you had to say.
This is easy. I mean, they got caught in the prison, and I will sing the praises of chapter 5 because the writing is unparalleled, because they really do a good job of destroying the hope that you have, because you're going into it, you're like, oh, they're stuck in prison, someone will come save them, it'll be fine, like they're gonna do something, right? And then you get to the actual off-scene ceremony, and you're like, oh no, like Mio's dead. Okay. And then just the way that chapter ends with N going to cut off Noah's head, and it just cuts to black. And when it says, do you want to save, it's not the journal. It's just the off-scene
it's not the journal,
flute. And it's like, well, I can't stop playing now. I need to know what happens. So
Yeah.
that was like the best 1 a.m. gaming experience I've ever had. And I went like not halfway through chapter 6, but I went like a significant, like way past when you would choose like Mio's hair length and get her essentially like normally back in the party. I went like right there, and then I was like, okay, it's 3 a.m. I need to stop.
Oh, you went farther than I did. Yeah, I like went to bed at like 3 a.m. but I did the end fight, I did the Nia fight, and then I saw the cutscene, and then I was done. But I still had enough like energy to laugh when I like the end fight. I was playing it in handheld. I was like, oh my god, this is so good. The music is amazing. This fight is amazing. I'm gonna press plus for an epic chain attack. It's gonna be amazing. And then the chain attack music pops up, and I was like, that's funny. I thought it was really funny.
Everyone hates on the chain attack music in 3. They're like, how dare the chain attack music interrupt stuff? And I'm like, I actually like the chain attack music. I love it. It gets me so hyped.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite Xenoblade songs. It's one of my favorite battle themes and one of my favorite Xenoblade songs. And like, I do agree that it gets in the way of very important battle themes, like Words That Did Not Reach You, which was N's theme. And then I'm like, it's interesting because in Future Redeemed and in the base game, the only time chain attack doesn't play is at the final boss. And I'm like, I understand what people are saying, but also it's like a good song, so I'm not really complaining.
I think during the last end fight, I don't think it plays. Because I think I remember doing that and being like, oh, they let it play this time. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
But
I also love that song which plays in the last end fight. It's a really, really good song. Yeah. Noah and N, that's one of the best songs in the game.
They really, like, I don't know. I just love the music so much. How did you feel about the like lyric songs? The actual A Step Away and Where We Belong.
I liked both of them a lot because I will say this. This is I don't know if it's a hot take, but from what I've heard on Twitter and stuff, I think it is. I prefer the vocal themes in Xenoblade 2. But I prefer the way they're implemented in the game in Xenoblade 3. Because Step Away, it plays during the prison scene and you feel hopeless, and it's basically the lyrics are like Noah expressing his like hopeless feelings, like I want to do everything I can to save Mio, but I can't do anything. And then Where We Belong is like it could be interpreted in the point of view of Noah or Mio or anyone in the party saying like, I don't want to leave, but like it's time to say goodbye or whatever. And that was it really hit hard. I think the part that hit me the hardest is when they're like reaching for each other and then the world separate and they run for each other. And I'm like, no, don't do this. Don't.
I didn't realize it until like watching that scene for the 5th time. Because I thought, oh, their hands are coming apart because they're like letting go. No, it's because the worlds are literally pulling them apart.
It's really...
That scene tears me up every single time.
It's so sad.
It's my least favorite trope in media is when the characters who like are madly in love or want to be together, even in a non-romantic way, just the world, like circumstances prevent that. My least favorite trope in media. I hate it. I love it because it gets me emotional, but I hate it because then I'm like, but I just want them to be happy.
When was another time that's happened? Like, if you can think of it.
There was another time,
like a movie or an anime or something.
There was, I don't know if you've ever watched the TV show Star vs. the Force of Evil, but it was a Disney XD show that ran like I think 2015 to 2019, I think. But they did it there, but they juke you out. Spoilers for like a 4-year-old show, by the way. You have these two characters who finally, like after 3 seasons, I think, like confessed, oh, we're in love, like we're dating now. And then they were like, oh, these worlds have to be separate. So like, we're going to go our separate ways. And you're like all depressed. And then at the end, they're like, oh, just kidding. These worlds actually merged together and now they're one. So you can be together. And I'm like, okay.
Literally Xenoblade Chronicles 3.
Xenoblade, that's all I wanted. Which I was really upset about it at first, and I guess we can use this to transition into Future Redeemed, is I didn't understand the ending. Like the post-credit scene where you have child Noah and he hears the off-seer flute, and I'm like, what?
Oh, yeah.
What is that supposed to mean?
I don't get what that is. Yeah.
And it wasn't until...
I just thought that, like, I thought that it was just like, oh, he remembers his life in Ionios.
Right.
And, like, with that knowledge, they're going to build Origin properly and do the thing properly.
That's what I didn't understand about the ending, is everyone's like, oh, the worlds had to be separated. I'm like, what? So they can try to reconverge again? Like, that was the way I interpreted the lore, is like, even if you separate them, the worlds want to go back to being one. And I thought that's why we were going to get an epilogue DLC as opposed to a prologue.
Oh, you were on Team Epilogue.
I was on Team Epilogue.
I have some questions about that for you in a bit. But the thing is, because what I assumed is the worlds needed to be separate or else they would annihilate. But what Origin needed to do, like once Origin activates, it'll like combine without annihilating or causing an annihilation event. So initially I was like, oh, they will separate, but maybe eventually they'll like come together one day, whatever. What it looks like happens instead is they separate and like Ionios is like no more. They separate to like end Ionios and the Endless Now, and then Origin like actually activates, combines them into like the new world.
Yeah, that's what I got from the post-credit scene of Future Redeemed, was like it shows that one world, and I was like, oh,
with the star coming down,
because it shows the two, and then the two mash into each other, and then you see the one, and I'm like, okay, so does this mean that it is fused into one?
Yeah.
And then it, like, if you recontextualize that original post-credit scene, it makes a lot more sense, because now you can say, okay, Child Mio is the one who is playing the off-seeing flute, and that's where Noah's going. And now it's like, okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, that does make more sense. But my thing about the prequel sequel DLC thing is ever since like the beginning of chapter 5, when you come to the city, you go to Memorial Hall, you go and see the founder statues, I was like, this is it. This is it. This is the DLC. I'm calling it right now. This is the DLC. And everyone's like, oh, but I don't want founders. I don't want to see more Mobius. I don't want Ionios. And like my thing was, I still like my issues with the story of 3, which were very minimal compared to a lot of other people, was that some things weren't explained as much as I wanted them to be. Like, what is the Lucky 7? What is the Sword of Origin? What is the Sword of the End? A lot of things, like, where is Alvis? That was my biggest thing, because I thought Alvis would... Before Xenoblade 3 was even announced, I was like, hey, what if Alvis is the villain of Xenoblade 3? Because I would want that. I want Alvis to be the villain, because I can see them doing that. And then it was announced. I saw the black fog, and I was like, Alvis, it's Alvis. And then it wasn't, and it was Mobius, and I was like, there's still a lot more questions. I was like, where did Ouroboros come from? Where did the Sword of the End come from? Where did these founders come from? What are they trying to do? What are they trying to achieve? All those questions, I was like, that can be answered with the Founders DLC. And I was like, with that DLC, we can also see Shulk and Rex, because we saw their statues. They're the mentors of the Founders. And I was like, hey, yeah, we should do this. And then we got the February Nintendo Direct with like the teaser and Tears of the Kingdom and all that. Funnily enough, my reaction, you can go back and see my reaction. My reaction for the Xenoblade 3 teaser, which was like 15 to 20 seconds, was like, it was so much more crazy and over the top compared to the Tears of the Kingdom trailer. Because I like that trailer, but compared to the other, like, that was, I'll just say, that wasn't one of my favorite Tears of the Kingdom trailers. I'll say that.
That's fair.
And yeah, but that Xenoblade 3, 15 seconds, I went crazy, because I was like, because I saw Matthew, and I was like, okay, that's the founder of Van Damme, which I saw on the statue. So this has to be a prequel. Plus there's Shulk and Rex, and Alvis is the villain, and I was like, yes, because yeah, I was really excited for a prequel. I understood why people wanted a sequel, but my reservations for that would be like, who would be the villain and what would be the conflict and what would be like the climactic final showdown. Yeah.
No, I can absolutely see that. I was on Team Epilogue purely for selfish reasons. I want to see Noah and Mio be happy. I want to see Uni and Tyon be happy. Like, I want to see the whole main party get back together. But then when you bring up those questions of like who's going to be the villain, what's going to be the conflict, like, you do get into those things. Like, I mean, like, you don't really have an answer. But
Takahashi would, because Takahashi knows how to do everything.
He knows exactly what he's doing. And I thought I was going to be upset if we got a prologue, but then I saw that 15-second trailer, and I was like, that's Rex? That's Shulk?
Oh.
Everyone thought Matthew looked like Noah, and I'm like, which, now that we know, like, Matthew was a descendant of Noah, yes, that totally makes sense. But the people who are like, well, it's just Noah, but he's older. And I'm like, no. These are very clearly two different characters. And we knew that because not that picture of Matthew, but there was one on the actual, like, if you went and looked at the DLC list
the
before
expansion
it came
pass
out,
page,
he was there. And you could tell, that's not Noah. That's not, like, he had the,
Noah,
what are they called? The Ouroboros gauntlets. Or whatever
the
they're
gauntlets,
called. That's not Noah's
the
blade.
fists of the end.
So I was okay. I was really okay with getting a prologue, especially after seeing the actual, like, trailer for it. I was like, you know what? I'm cool with this. Rex looks dope. I'm excited to see Shulk again. And I was worried it was going to be a little too fan servicey, and I think they handled it in the best way you can.
Yes.
Without it feeling too fan servicey.
Oh yeah. I think if anything, some of us, like, I was okay with the fan service in 3. Fan service meaning callbacks.
Yeah.
Because, like, a lot of people were like, oh, I wanted to see Rex and Shulk and Fiora and Dunban and all these references and all that. And I'm like, I don't think it would have fit in the base game. And a lot of that was reserved for Future Redeemed. And it was done well, but I also do agree with some people who say that we could have gotten a bit more, because, like, I also do, like, I was okay with them not saying the names of their wives and kids and all that, but I just thought it was kind of weird that, like, the only people they name drop are Melia and Nia, who are in Ionios. Like, Shulk doesn't say the name Fiora. He doesn't say the name Dunban. Rex doesn't say the names of Pyra, Mithra, Zeke. Even, like, Panacea doesn't talk about Charla and Ryan, and Linka doesn't talk about Zeke and Pandoria. And I'm like, you remember these people, right?
It's right there. And it's weird that Rex doesn't really talk about his relationship to Nia at all. Like, regardless of how people feel about the end of 3 where you see the picture, regardless of how people feel about that, they were still, like, close in 2. So it feels weird that he didn't really mention it.
He talks about Nia once, and it's a very very subtle comment. Like, someone actually commented on a YouTube video of mine today mentioning that like I made a video about, like, talking about why I enjoyed Shulk and Rex and their inclusion in Future Redeemed, and there's one thing I forgot to talk about, and it was that Nia scene. And that person commented saying, oh, it was like, this was the subtext of that, the context, and I was like, oh, that's interesting, because basically what it was is Matthew's talking about the Ouroboros stone with Shulk and Rex and everyone, and he's like, oh, Granddad used to work on it so much, and now he's gone, and Shulk is like, we'll continue your granddad's legacy. And then Rex butts in the conversation. He's like, hey, you know, I know the person who gave you that stone. It was the Queen of Agnes, right? And Shulk is like, Rex, chill out.
He's like, Rex, chill.
So, like, that was the Nia reference, but it would have been nice if they talked about some more, like, sentimental Nia stuff, because I am, like, me coming from Xenoblade 2, like Pyra and Mithra are cool. Nia is my favorite character in that game, and I shipped Rex and Nia from the very beginning. And that whole like scene that everyone memes on is one of my favorite moments in the entirety of Xenoblade 2. I don't care what anyone says, but that's another story for another time. But yeah, I do wish we got more backstory, because we don't even know who Mithra's kid is. There are theories on who his or her identity could be. Some I subscribe to, some I do not.
Listen, Xenoblade community, it's not Dirk. It's
okay,
not. I'm not gonna subscribe to this. I'm just gonna pretend I didn't hear.
I was one of the Dirk believers, because like the thing is, I want to ask you this. Do you know, like, I'm sure you know your Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
So how did you feel about Kylo Ren and Han Solo and Leia, that whole family dynamic?
Meh. Could have been better.
Yeah?
But
yeah?
I mean, that's my general sentiment for the sequel trilogy as a whole.
Yeah. I have my grievances with the sequels, and that's mostly from 8 and 9, especially 9.
Oh, yeah.
But 7 was good, and I liked the whole setup with the Solo family, and then Ben Solo and Kylo Ren. I like that. The way they went with it in Last Jedi was whatever, but I thought, like, here's the thing, like, before Future Redeemed released, there was a lot of Dirk theories going around, and I was like, oh, you know, it'd be cool if we see Dirk in Future Redeemed, and we see him killing Uni like how Uni remembered it, and then Rex sees that, and the whole party goes to fight Dirk, and Rex remembers him because Rex is the father, but Dirk doesn't remember because he doesn't remember anything before Ionios, but he remembers his past Ionios lives, and it's like this gnarly battle, and it's super emotional for Rex, and I was like, ooh, that would be cool, that'd be cool.
It makes me kind of sad that Rex only met, canonically as far as we know, he only met one of his kids in Ionios. We don't know if he's met Mio or not. And, I mean, we obviously
I don't think
know.
he would have met Mio, no, because, the thing about Mio/M is, Mio was around for a while, probably as long as Rex was. She was being reincarnated, but if Rex was just chilling out in the Cent Omnia region, Colony 9 area, he probably wouldn't have been around much of Agnes territory, he probably wouldn't have seen her. And then for M wouldn't have been around there because, like, shortly before the events of Future Redeemed is when N destroys the city at Hope's Rest, kills his son, and has that fight with Alpha, and then M is reborn as Mobius. So he most probably wouldn't have seen M either. So yeah, Glimmer is the only one he sees, and hot take here, I'm not a fan of Glimmer. I didn't like her character. Didn't like her, like, personality-wise, character-wise. I was like, nope, not a fan of her. So, and I don't usually feel that about Xenoblade Chronicles party members. I love the design that Saito went with her character design, her whole, like, that is cool. That's good. Just her as a character, I just couldn't stand her. But I liked Nicole. Nicole was cool. But Glimmer was just like...
So let me ask, if you don't like Glimmer, how do you feel about Mithra? Because Glimmer emulates a lot of Mithra, which is why I don't feel like Dirk could be Mithra's kid, because I feel like Mithra's kid would emulate more of Pyra, especially if Pyra's kid is emulating Mithra, like you kind of do Mithra, the swap there.
Yeah.
So it's like...
And then Mio is just Mio.
Mio is just Mio.
Yeah. Mio is just Mio.
She kind of gets the best of both parents.
Yeah, I liked Mithra because I think Mithra did the Tsundere thing better than Glimmer did. And on top of that, I like Mithra's character development in 2 a lot. Like, it's funny because everyone's like, oh, I love Pyra. Pyra's so great. I love Pyra's character and everything. And my joke is that in Xenoblade 2, Mithra is the one who has the character development versus Pyra. And, like, Pyra does, like, develop over the course of the story and the game and all that, but Mithra is the one who, like, you see her, like, do you know what happens in the course of Xenoblade 2? Like, I don't want to spoil too much since you haven't played it.
A little bit. I just know
I will say this.
That they can switch up until, like, the end of the game when they become 2 separate people.
Do you know what happens in the DLC for 2?
Yes. I know.
Okay, I'll still
I know
be vague.
that Pirate didn't exist in the DLC. I know that
Yeah.
Mithra went into like this 500-year sleep, and that's where like Pyra was created. Was out of her response to Torna getting torched.
Kinda. Yes. I don't want to say too much, but basically, Mithra's like really big major character development arc happens during Torna. And like the reason Xenoblade 2 kicks off the way it does is because of how Mithra is feeling in the situation and the trauma that she's been through. And then like once you meet Mithra, she comes off as like cold and a little like she gives Rex and everyone else the cold shoulder because of just her past.
Right.
And once you realize that, you kind of understand where she's coming from. Glimmer was just annoying. She was just like, oh, I want my homecoming. Oh, get out of my face. And I'm like, I like, as an Agnian soldier, I can understand, but at the same time, it, like, I just didn't, no.
It felt weird, especially given that we spent all of the base game with Agnian soldiers, especially with Mio, who was also close to her homecoming. And it was weird because we've never really seen any character act that way about their homecoming. Like, she was very like, I want to die. Let me die. And nobody else was like that.
Lance and Uni were sort of like that. If you remember in the beginning of 3, Lance was like, hey, look at that guy. He's getting his homecoming. That's going to be me, Noah. Look at that. I'm going to be on that stage with the flute playing. And I'm like, yeah, it sounds fun, Lance.
If Melia's going to come send me off, I'll have my homecoming anyway.
I'll be first in line. Yeah.
Even though it's not the real Melia.
Yeah. That was an interesting plot twist because I would, like, I was telling another friend this, I was like, I would honestly have been fine if they stuck with the evil queens thing. Like, if Melia and Neo were evil for some reason, and if the reason was good enough, I would have bought into it. It would have been sad and heartbreaking and soul-crushing because I love both of them so much, but if it was a good enough reason, I would have bought into it. But I like how they went with this story. But back to the whole homecoming thing. Lanz was like that. Some other Agnian soldiers were kind of like that. But we saw a lot of diversity in their approach to this whole Endless Now thing. Like, Juniper, they just accepted it and they're just like, we're just gonna wait it out, and once our time comes, we'll just be gone. Whereas, like, other people like Xeon and Kite and all that, they're like doing whatever it takes to like be the best of the best. And then Ethel was like knocked down, and like Ethel and Kamaravi's whole approach to this homecoming Endless Now thing was very interesting because they were doing it for their colony, and then eventually they're like, we're doing it for ourselves. And not only for ourselves, we're doing it for each other just because we want to fight each other. Right. That's our like purpose in life. That was really cool. But yeah, Glimmer it just came off as very whiny and annoying. But I will say this, she did develop throughout the story.
Yeah.
But when it was time for her to like, not time, when it came to the point when she was developed and more mature, understanding and all, she was still not as like interesting as someone like A or Adam. Oh, sorry, not Adam. Matthew and Shulk and Rex, of course, just stole the show. But I will say, like, that conversation that Rex had with Glimmer before they went off to the mountains is very nice, because Shulk references one of the best moments of Xenoblade 2 in that cutscene, and he also references his mentor, who is Zeke, in that cutscene. But yeah. So, yeah, that's my opinion on Glimmer. Nicole was better for me personally because of his whole like personality, his approach to everything. But yeah, I overall think the cast is very good.
I liked Nicole. The hardest thing for me to get over, though, is I kept forgetting that he was like 20 because he looks a lot younger than he is. And
he looks like he's 15.
Yeah,
or
he
something.
does. He looks a lot younger because he's... shorter and he's just built different.
Is he 10th term? Is it confirmed that he is?
Him and Glimmer are both 10th term.
Okay.
And like that combined with his deep voice, I was like, you feel like a kid who hit puberty way too soon. And then I have to keep reminding myself, oh no, he's he's 20, he's in his 10th term, he's about to like repeat the process. Okay, this makes sense. I think my favorite in the main cast, and this might sound like a cop-out, but I think it's Matthew. I
Matthew's
really
great.
bought into his character of like, nah, the world can be perfect. Like, yeah, people die, but that's just kind of how it is.
Yeah.
And him contrasted with Niall.
Yeah,
that was
really
such
good.
a great contrast to someone who's like, why do people need to keep dying? Like, this is the world you want. Why is it imperfect? And he's like, doesn't really have an answer.
He was a very wide-eyed, optimistic kind of guy.
Yeah.
And you have that's why I want you to play 2, because Rex was that kind of guy. But Rex, like, here's the thing, like, Matthew has a very different approach to it. He's very like going with the punches, and he was like, oh, let's think with our fists before our brains kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And Rex was kind of like a balance in that, and a lot of my friends also compared him to Adam, because Adam in the DLC for Xenoblade 2 Torna, he is also very optimistic and very jovial, and he doesn't really think of like a lot of the serious repercussions of things, and that always comes back to like get him, and like it leads to a lot of the consequences within the story, which you also see with Matthew. But I really like that sibling dynamic, like you said. And even Niall is a very good character, even though she wasn't like initially part of the main party, but I liked seeing the flashbacks. I like seeing her opinion on a lot of these things, because I was telling my friend this, that Niall is sort of like a stand-in for the audience, in the sense that like we as players don't like to see this war.
Right.
We don't like seeing Kevis and Agnes fight. We're always like, what if things were just better? And Niall feels that way, but she's so torn up about it that she'll go against anything to like make that world a reality, and then she'll become the avatar of Alpha, who will like create this whole new world. But yeah, I really enjoyed Matthew. And real quick thing about Rex is, throughout the entirety of like pre-Xenoblade 3 and like during like the Xenoblade 2 hype and all that, Rex was always like being picked on by people, saying, oh, this guy is silly, this guy is dumb, this guy looks goofy, he acts goofy, he's too optimistic, he's too wide-eyed, he's too like, and I'm like, oh, well, some of these people have probably played the game but probably don't relate to him, but others, you can tell when they haven't played the game by the things they're saying. But like the things you say about Matthew remind me of young Rex, because young Rex was that really positive go-getter kind of guy. But he's like, I also didn't like Rex in the beginning, because I'm like, you're silly, you don't think about things before you like go out and do things, and you just don't listen to people. So like, yeah, you can go like do whatever, right? And then he actually goes through a lot of significant changes and development. And you compare Rex at the start and you compare Rex at the end, they're two completely different people.
Yeah.
And sometimes I like think to myself, like, who had the better character development, Shulk, Rex, or Noah? Because like sometimes Rex is at the top, sometimes Noah's at the top, sometimes Shulk is at the top. In the end, all protagonists are just written very well.
Yeah, I actually had a really hard time picking between Shulk and Noah, because those are the only two games I've actually played. And just, it was so hard for me to choose. And I ultimately went with Noah, because I could just relate to his story more. But that is not to say anything negative about Shulk. I really love Shulk's development. I can relate to him as well. But Noah just ended up winning out there. And one thing I want to say about Niall, and I've seen this point, is like, everyone's like, Niall is just a walking plot device, because the only time she shows up is so you can fight Alpha. And I'm like, hold on, let's actually break this down. I think Niall getting used as the avatar for Alpha really sets up how much Alvis has changed since Xenoblade 1, and it really helps illustrate the split between Alvis / Alpha and A. where they say
yes,
in the game, A is the conscience of Alvis. And retains all of the memories from Xenoblade 1 and their adventure with Shulk. And, like, in order to really showcase that split is, like, we're going to make Alvis do something he would not have done in the main game. He, like, he never would have possessed someone for his own goals. And that's what he's doing in this game, is manipulating someone whose emotions are very out there and are very susceptible to being messed around with and manipulated. And now he's making that his avatar in order to do the thing that he's programmed to. Like Rex says, he's a heartless machine, which is exactly true. So I think having Niall get used as the avatar really helps sell the split between Alvis and A and really distinguish between their characters.
That's a really good point, because, like, Alpha slash Ontos needs someone with that kind of mentality, and, like, I don't like this world of Ionios, I want to leave, I want something else, and just kind of like a hard reset. Like, and Niall wished for that to happen, so that's why he kind of gravitated to her. And using her, and not as a plot device, but as someone who has the same intentions, motivations, and feelings towards this whole situation as Alpha, using her to accomplish this goal is I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah.
And yeah, I will say one thing real quick about Alpha. The one thing that really tripped me up with Future Redeemed was why Alpha was the way it was. Until this, like, I did a podcast with my friend recently on my channel, and I just vocalized it myself, and then once I, like, talked about it, I was like, oh wait, it makes sense. Because, and then I saw some other videos which added more context to it, and it kind of blew my mind, because basically, Ontos needed Numa and Logos to be kind of sane and to be, like, the normal kind of Ontos core, right? Like, it's almost like they're his parents, like Logos and Numa are the parents, like, parenting Ontos, keeping him, like, in check. And of course, in the world of Xenoblade 2, they would have all coexisted as blades. But he went to the world of Xenoblade 1. But people like me wondered, I was like, why was Alvis the god of Bionis, but why wasn't he a heartless machine? Because Numa and Logos weren't there. But someone else was saying that within the laws that Ontos created within Bionis, he created Zanza and Maineth to be his, like, Logos and Numa equivalents. Like, the male persona and the female persona to kind of balance him out. But in Ionios, that didn't exist, and that was the, I guess you could say, the mistake that Melia and Shulk and other people made when creating Origin with the Ontos core. They probably didn't realize that Ontos was the arbiter and it would go rogue. And that's what happened. He was like, oh, this is what this Origin shenanigans has done. It's created a war. I don't want this war. It's stupid. Let's go back to where it all started, back in Radamanthus, and redo the whole thing to create a new world. So that was that whole thing, going back to where it started, especially having gotten the context from Xenoblade 2, because Xenoblade 2 had that cutscene from 1, but it was more, like, detailed. You see more backstory. You hear about things straight from Klaus, telling him about everything, what happened. That was basically the thing that I spoiled for myself going into Xenoblade 2, going into it. So I saw that, and then I was like, I gotta play this game. And then it called back at the end of Xenoblade 3 Future Redeemed, because Future Redeemed had the Klaus kind of stuff, whereas 3 base game didn't really have it, and that's what had some fans wanting more. I was like, I won't say too much, but 2 basically had its sort of, like, it kind of had a bookend to that stuff. So I was like, oh, since 3 didn't go into it, it's fine. But the conclusion that we got in Future Redeemed was very good. Also, I hope I didn't spoil too much about 2, by the way. So.
Nah, it's okay. I'll probably forget by the time I play it. I got to finish Tears of the Kingdom before I can think about playing another game. A couple more things about Future Redeemed before we move into our Zelda talk, because I know we both want to talk about Zelda. Do you think, and you might have already answered this, but do you think that Future Redeemed served as a good conclusion for the Xenoblade Chronicles, or I guess more accurately, the Klaus saga as a whole? Because Takahashi himself has said he wants to keep making Xenoblade Chronicles games, which would imply that, okay, we're done with the Klaus saga, and then we're going to get Xenoblade Chronicles 4, which starts an entirely new can of worms that we'll spend the next 10 years trying to figure out what Takahashi is cooking. But
I think it had a good conclusion with what was done, especially with Ontos and Klaus, and even the explanations that I got about Ionios. Like, I got sufficient explanations about the Swords of Origin and Swords of the End and all that. Those explanations were very good with how it was done within the game, very subtly. Riku was explained. Riku's lore was explained, thank God.
Oh, man. I lost my mind when I found out that Riku was actually the son of Riki. I was like, what? And that Melia was his master? I was like, everything makes sense now.
Here's my thing. I don't think it's the son of Riki, or I don't think Riki is the son. Sorry, I don't think Riku is the son of Riki. I think Riku is the son of Kino. Have you played Future Connected?
No, but
okay.
I vaguely know about it.
Okay. Basically, play Future Connected. That's all I'll say.
I mean, I was going to play Future Connected back when I didn't think they were going to shadow drop this 2 weeks before Zelda. I thought I had more time. I thought they were going to drop this in like June, and I'd be like, okay, I'm a month into Zelda. I played Future Connected in the time that I actually played Future Redeemed. That I had that time marked off to play Future Connected right before Zelda, and then they dropped this, and I'm like, oh.
And then it shadow dropped,
Guess I'm playing this.
It's a very short story though. You can, like, I beat it in a couple days, so if you like take a break with Zelda, or if you finish Zelda, you can just finish off Future Connected.
Yeah, I'm eventually gonna go back. Colin keeps telling me I need a New Game Plus Definitive Edition and play it again, but play it in a more consistent chunk. And he says if I do that, I'll probably end up liking it more, which is probably true.
Oh, okay.
But maybe I'll get around to that eventually, because I do want to do a New Game Plus of 3. So I might do all right, let me New Game Plus Definitive Edition, play 2, and then New Game Plus 3, and play them in order. But we'll see. That's a lot of JRPG.
What I want to do is I started a New Game Plus of Definitive Edition after 3 was announced, and that was like my first time ever streaming a full-length game like that on Twitch. I think I was streaming on Twitch then, but I didn't get very far because I had other games I wanted to play as well in the backlog. So I didn't finish that New Game Plus, but I got to Aerith C. No, I got to Alchemoth, so I got decently far. So I got pretty far into the game. The game that I really want a New Game Plus is Xenoblade 2, because I've only played that game once, and I played it a lot. Like, I played that game a lot, but I really want to go back into it and re-experience the game, because, like, even though it was just like two or so years ago, things have changed with my opinions on that game a lot. Like, I tell people, like, my opinion of Xenoblade 2 was here when I heard about it, then it was here after I beat it, and then after 3 was announced, it was here, and then after I beat 3, it was here. So, like, it keeps going up, like, my appreciation for the game. But yeah, it's, that is the game I want to go back to the most if it comes to a New Game Plus. Because also with 3, like, 3 and Future Redeemed, I looked on my Switch, I've exceeded 100 hours, and I'm like,
oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm good with Xenoblade 3 for now, even though, as of now, since I haven't beaten Tears of the Kingdom, caveat, I haven't beaten Tears of the Kingdom yet, Xenoblade 3 is my favorite Switch game.
Okay.
Yeah, but I will have to complete at least the story of Tears of the Kingdom to, like, compare it, but we'll get to that in a bit. But Tears of the Kingdom is phenomenal.
I'm holding off judgment on where that goes on my favorite Switch games, Zelda games, and like games overall.
Favorite games of all time.
I want to finish the main story and then give it a little extra time because I don't want it to fall victim to recency bias. Where I'm like, oh, because it's brand new. Like, obviously, it's the best thing. And then 6 months from now, be like, well, actually, it's not my favorite game of all time. That still belongs to Breath of the Wild. So I want to give it a little more time just to make sure. Yeah. And actually, I didn't have to do that with Xenoblade 3. Because Xenoblade 3 is definitely in my top 3 favorite games on Switch. But it's also my number 2 favorite game of all time. And I knew as soon as the credits rolled... What was that?
What was number 1? Or what is number 1?
Number 1 is Breath of the Wild.
Oh, okay.
Which honestly, I never thought a Xenoblade game would get anywhere close to the top 3, let alone number 2. And I knew as soon as the credits rolled on 3, I was like, no, this is number 2.
Yeah,
it's not better than Breath of the Wild, but it has surpassed everything else on this list. And that's kind of why I want to do a New Game Plus. Is because Xenoblade 3 was the first game, aside from like games like Breath of the Wild or Minecraft, where I actually wanted to explore. In Definitive Edition, I just did I went where the map told me. I did not explore off of the little dotted line that you're supposed to do to follow the story.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah.
But in 3, I found myself spending whole nights just filling out sections of the map and just going across and filling everything out. I fought enough of those like bosses to get all of the main weapons except one.
Oh, you fought super bosses too. That's cool.
I did enough super bosses and got enough origin metal to upgrade all of the weapons except for I think Tyon. And I got everyone their origin weapons, and I did all of that before I went and fought Zed.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, if we're gonna get really cool cutscenes, I want my weapons to look dope. Yeah. So just having that openness and exploration is what made me love that game so much. And I really love the characters, and I've said it on podcasts before, but that game also, it was one of those like right place, right time games where what was going on in my life just resonated with the messages and themes of the game.
Oh yeah, same
and that like now I have an emotional attachment to the game, which is why it'll probably stay in number 2 forever. So
the whole Ouroboros and Mobius dynamic, the whole like 10-year lifespans, I found those concepts very interesting, because a lot of people go into the game and they're like, oh, this whole world is so sad, it's bleak, it's depressing, and I'm like, but there is hope in there, and the hope is Ouroboros, and the way they kind of like tied that in with the themes and the symbolism of the entire narrative, I think that was very good and well done. Yeah. I will also say one thing is Xenoblade has some really good villains. Like my favorites in 1 were Egil. Egil is amazing. Metalface is great as well. 2 has the best collection of villains, like Jin, Malos, and Malthus, very good villains. Xenoblade 3 has probably my favorite video game villain of all time, and that is N. And N was great in Xenoblade 3, but it was still a toss-up between N and Jin. I was like, Jin is cool, but N might be better, I don't know. And then I played Future Redeemed, and Future Redeemed, this is what happened. Zed was like this, and then Zed just went boom, and then N was like this. N was like high, and then he was like, my appreciation just like skyrocketed for N.
Yeah, that's totally fair. N is an incredible villain, and N is an incredible villain, especially compared to Zed, because Zed is kind of he's a passive villain. He's not actively pursuing Ouroboros, and a lot of people are like, why doesn't he actively attack Ouroboros? And I'm like, because they're not threatening him directly. Like, yes, they want to come for him, but he's the kind of boss who's like, okay, I'm just going to sit here and wait for you to, come and fight me. This is what I have minions for. Like,
you know who was almost more of a threat to Zed than the Xenoblade 3 party was Alpha. Yeah. And that's why Alpha, that's why he, said, hey, go to the city and do this, because Alpha is threatening me, he's threatening you, and the cherry on top is I'll give you your
immortality
wife back. I'll
with
bring
your
her back
wife.
to life. Yeah. I'll give you immortality, and the one you love the most, I'll bring her back to life.
And it's like, all right, whole genocide it is.
That whole dynamic, I was like, I knew N would be in the story of the DLC in some way, but I was like, the way they factor N into all of this, I'm very curious to see how that goes, because I want to see N destroy the city. I want to see his motivation behind that. I want to see like why he actually chooses to do it outside of Mio, and then turns out the reason was because of Alvis the whole time. So that was really cool.
Yeah. My last note on Future Redeemed, and then we can transition to Zelda, is I really love the dynamic between Matthew and A, and it genuinely rivals for my favorite Xenoblade dynamic. Because what is your
number one?
My number one...
Uni and Taion?
Yeah.
Because I love that one a lot, yeah.
It's either Uni and Taion or Noah and Mio. It's one of those
Noah and Mio is a very good one, yeah. I like Shulk and Fiora, obviously. Shulk and Fiora are great. Rex and Nia, I like that, because Rex and Pyro, of course, like that's the one everyone talks about, but Rex and Nia, there's some really nice subtleties in the game that, like, there's some really good moments between them. And then with 3, like, everyone, like, I like Lance and Senna's dynamic. Uni and Taion is a standout because of just the differences of their personality, and then Noah and Mio is the best romantic couple in the entire series.
Yeah.
And then A and Matthew is very interesting, because Matthew, like you said, is the hot-headed kind of go-getter type. A is the more like, hey, let's be logical and rational about this.
Yeah, you know that meme where you have like the one person on the leash, who's like the
other guy's on the
gremlin,
leash,
and then there's the one holding it. I saw a meme of that, but it was Matthew and A, and that's one of my favorite memes. Because I'm like, yes, you have summarized their dynamic in one image. Because even from the get-go, Matthew's like, all right, we're going to knock these guys out. And A is like, how about we don't? Like, how about we be calm and rational? And he's like, no. And then goes and busts people up.
And then they become the Mobius killers, and Matthew's like, yeah, Mobius killers. And A is like, that's not a good thing, you know?
Now you've drawn unnecessary attention to us. Thanks, Matthew.
Yeah. But yeah, Future Redeemed overall, fantastic DLC, fantastic conclusion. Real quick, I want to say, I really like the gameplay loop a lot. I like the affinity goals and stuff, because that reminded me of Xenoblade Chronicles X, which I was playing a bit before Tears of the Kingdom, because Xenoblade X does something like, you know in Tears of the Kingdom where you go into a cave and it's like checked off when you get the bubble gem?
Yeah.
Yeah, Xenoblade X does something like that, but it's more like in your face with the gamepad and stuff. And I felt that way with the affinity system, that it was encouraging me to explore so I can get my character stronger. And it was like it was doing it in a very non-intrusive way, so I kind of liked that game design loop. So I enjoyed that a lot. I liked the combat, I liked the overall gameplay, and it was very condensed, and the quality of life was good. So overall, it was a great story, great DLC. I don't know how I would rank it compared to Xenoblade 3 base game, because I like Torna better than the base game of 2, but I don't know if I like Future Redeemed better than the base game of 3, but in the end, like, the combination of Xenoblade 3 and Future Redeemed, best Xenoblade game, best Xenoblade experience.
Yeah, I would agree. I really enjoyed the DLC. My one gripe with it was I didn't like the way they locked off gems, arts, and accessories. And that you like, I liked in the base game how it was something you had to grind for, and you could level up and reach a certain level, and then once you hit that level, okay, now you have a new accessory slot, you have a new gem slot.
Yeah.
I didn't like how in the DLC it was you have to find these unlock kits. You have to, because then, like, if they handled the unlock kits in a way of like, okay, you found one, now you can unlock one, like, this gem slot on every character. But it was like, you needed an unlock kit for every slot on every character. And I felt like that became detrimental, because I got to that end fight at Prison Island, and I had to change it down to easy, because my characters just didn't have the skills to fight a boss that hard. Some
characters are super overpowered. Some characters didn't get any affinity on them. Like, I like, because I know, like,
I liked the affinity system of using the affinity points to unlock, like, the skills and upgrade them. I just didn't like that they locked the extra slots in the way that they did.
Yeah.
That was really my only gripe.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I know, like, I don't know if you know who NL is. He's a big Xenoblade content creator. He mostly does, like, gameplay combat guides, but some story stuff as well. He beat the DLC in, like, in just, like, one night because he needed to see the end and, like, make content on it, right? But the way he did it is he literally just grinded Rex, just only leveled up Rex's skills, Rex's arts, and then he's like, I just Hail Married Rex with Rex the entire game. I just completed the game with Rex. And that was it. And I was
that was what I heard from Twitter, was to just put all your eggs in Rex and be like, all right, he's the tank and the attacker and go for it.
He's everything.
Yep.
Yeah.
When
you're a crit machine, you're everything.
Yeah. I would definitely... I still prefer base game over the DLC, just because I feel like I love the characters in the DLC, but I also feel like the base game gives us more time to get attached to those characters. Yeah. And I think, not to say that like the DLC needed to be its own like 100-hour plus game, but I think if it would have had a little time, because it did feel kind of short. Like it felt like once you start the journey to Prison Island and you get there, like that's it. And it's over. Yeah. Like, I genuinely didn't know if that was the final boss or not. Yeah. And I was like... Yeah. I felt like it was a little longer than Torna. But I also played this a lot quicker than I did with Torna. I also feel like that was a factor that I felt like I had to play it faster because I knew as soon as Zelda came out, I was not going to touch it again. Yeah, you're not going to, So I feel like if it came out in June or July... maybe my experience, and maybe I need to go back and play it again and give myself more time, just to have more time to grind and upgrade stuff and do more exploring, because I did want to do more of that, but then we got a week out from Tears of the Kingdom, and I was like, oh man, I get a week and I'm still not done. Oh, I need to just finish it.
It was weird because I was literally like thinking, hey, we'll get a trailer in April. We'll get a trailer for a release in June after Tears of the Kingdom, because June is the empty month for Nintendo. Yeah. Before Pikmin. And that would have been a perfect time. I don't know why they released it so quickly. I'm not complaining because like we got to play it early and it was good, but it would have been a little less stressful, I guess, if we got it after Zelda, because if it was in like mid-June, a lot of us would be done with the main story of Tears of the Kingdom probably by then. Yeah. So then we could just like enjoy Future Redeemed. But
or even if they dropped it great, like at the beginning of April. Like it's just 2 weeks to Zelda seems way too soon.
No, they couldn't have done that because then it would have been really mean to Advance Wars. Like think about that. I mean,
the fact that they dropped the trailer. They dropped the trailer before Advance Wars came out. Nah, nobody was talking about Advance Wars at that point. They were like, we just need... Advance Wars to Nintendo is like that one YouTube video that you've recorded 6 months ago, and you don't know really when the right time to put it out is, and you're like, I mean, it needs to just go out, so like, let's just throw it out, and if it does good, great. If it doesn't, oh well.
Yeah. It was very sad with Advance Wars because... it's a good series. Like, I've always wanted to play it. I might get the remake Reboot Camp, but it just released in a very bad time because two of my favorite video game franchises are getting new releases. Xenoblade with Future Redeemed, Zelda with Tears of the Kingdom, so...
I also don't think it helped that it got delayed twice, especially when it got delayed last year, like a month before it was supposed to come out.
I don't even think they really needed to delay it, but whatever.
I think they could have put it out and it would have been fine. Like, but I can also understand why they did what they did. I can understand why it got delayed because they didn't want to have any of that controversy of like, oh, Nintendo put out a war game during this war time. And I'm like, no, I get it. But also, it's a cartoon war game. Like, I think it would have been okay.
Also, Xenoblade 3 is the more, like, dark and gritty war game, if you consider that a war game. I don't know.
I don't know. It was just...
That's what I was actually very, like, this was a legitimate concern I had, because when they delayed Advance Wars, I was like, are they actually going to do the same for Xenoblade 3? Because, like, Nintendo does some weird stuff.
And then they bumped it up 2 months.
Huh? Oh yeah, and then when it moved out 2 months, I was like, yes.
I was
yes.
I was sitting in a college class, like I was sitting in one of my classes, and I saw the notification pop up on Twitter, a new Xenoblade trailer, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, I'll watch it. So I'm sitting there, I'm watching it on my thing, and then it just says July 29th, and I was like, whoa! Like I had to contain myself in class, and I was like, oh my god, they moved it up 2 months. Like it's not a delay. We're moving it up forward 2 months. Like
it was the first thing I saw when I got out of bed. I like rolled out of bed, looked at my phone. My phone was like filled with notifications and texts, and all my friends were like, "Hey, did you see the trailer? Did you see the trailer?" And I looked at it, I was like, "What is happening?" Yeah,
you can tell
insane.
That the game was supposed to come out in September because the collector's editions didn't ship until September, which means those collector's editions were definitely not ready for July.
Yeah.
The game was. Collector's editions were not. But then also, if you look at Nintendo's Twitter in September, there was another huge push for Xenoblade, which tells me that they had a bunch of material ready for September that they didn't use in July, or they did use in July, and they just wanted to use it again to push it around whatever the original release date was. Because, yes, they told us September, but they had a specific date. They just didn't want to say a specific date yet. Because I guess that, well, now we know there would have been some internal stuff like, is it actually hitting in September? Is Splatoon going to hit in July? Or do we need to swap them? And then they swapped them, and that's what they did. Which I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
Because I love Xenoblade.
I'm not the biggest Splatoon fan, so I was fine with that.
Yeah, I mean, I have Splatoon 3, but I don't play it that much.
Yeah. But yeah, you wanna talk about Zelda?
All right. So, for those who are listening, spoiler-wise, we're going to be going into the Dragon's Tears memories. So if you have not gotten all of the memories, you might want to tune out because we're gonna dive into those.
Also, Nick has technically gotten more memories than I have because
that's true.
And you'll see why when we talk about this, because he will hopefully also dodge the spoilers as well. I know he will, but like, yeah, let's go into it. Yeah, spoilers about the memories.
Out of the 18 memories here's the thing.
I will say this.
I'm only missing one.
Oh, okay, that's good.
I'm missing. I think memory 11 is the only one I'm missing.
Okay, because I know there's one after the Draconification one. I haven't seen it, but I know it's there.
Yeah.
I
know exactly which one you're talking about.
Is that the one you're missing?
No, the one I'm missing is right after the birth of the Demon King. And I don't know where I'm going to get it from. I don't know if I'm going to get it.
I think I've seen that, and it's a very minor one, but I don't know where you get it from. I don't know. Maybe you have to like beat more of the dungeons. I don't know.
Because right now it jumps from Birth of the Demon King, where we see him get the Secret Stone, and then power up into that like demise looking form.
I call him Spaghetti Hair Ganondorf.
It jumps from that memory to the Sage's Vow, where Raru's like, "Hey, I got these stones. We're gonna use them to fight Ganondorf."
Then it goes to the King's Duty, where he sees Sonu's grave, right?
Oh yeah.
And then it is the Sage's Vow.
I had to watch that cutscene a couple times
to see.
I had to watch that cutscene a couple times to see if she actually died. Like I thought, like, oh, maybe he just knocked her out and like broke her back. Yeah. And then I saw that cutscene and I'm like, oh no, she's dead.
Punch in the back. Yeah, that was a really hard punch in the back.
Like he broke her spine or something and killed her on the spot. And I'm like, you know what, man, that is wild. Also, here's where okay. What we're gonna talk about mostly, if you're still here, is timeline stuff. Because it gets real wacky in this game. And the further I play, the more I'm convinced they're just resetting the timeline. They're just starting over. They said, frick the timeline, starting over with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah.
Because go ahead.
Do you know who Monster Maze is?
Yeah. I've watched a couple of his videos.
Yeah, so Monster Maze is very big on lore. And he was on another podcast. He was on Ratatosker's podcast talking about early impressions, and he wasn't upset by any of this, But he was very confused, and he was like, well, me having played Breath of the Wild, me personally, I understood that all the timelines are coming together.
Yeah.
But I thought that they came together for the sequel to build off of that, you know?
Right, not to go reestablish what happened before.
I was very surprised that they did that. And my headcanon as of now, and this is when, like, spoilers get legit, is that Skyward Sword still happened. Ocarina of Time still happened. Twilight Princess, Majora's Mask, all of that stuff, Wind Waker, it happened. They all came together. Once they came together, here's my theory. And this isn't confirmed. This will probably be denied.
Exactly.
You probably
we don't know if it's
it's
confirmed
already
or not.
denied. Yeah. I think that the people responsible for this timeline convergence were the Zonai. The Zonai descended from the heavens, converged the timelines together. Then what happened is that got rid of all the chaos or whatever. Then the Zonai reestablished this new Hyrule.
Yep.
Rauru is the new king, and what I'm assuming Sonia comes from Lurelin Village. I don't know what makes her special, like in terms of like powers relating to Goddess Hylia and all that. And again, it's really sad because it's I wouldn't say it's sad, but for us fans like you and me and like people like Monster Maze was talking about this. He's like, we're trying whatever we can to make sense of any of this, but none of it makes sense because what we know is everything we know from the past games. But imagine if all that is just kind of thrown out the window. Like, imagine like if I gave this example to my friend. Imagine in Xenoblade 4, to commemorate the old heroes, you see a statue of Rex with the Minato. And
right,
see,
like that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and then you see a statue of Shulk and his wives are Pyra and Mithra. And he has the Aegis swords, and you're like, this doesn't make sense. And I was talking to Triforce Trends about this. I'm sure you know who Triforce Trends is, another Zelda YouTuber. I was telling him that I believe that the legend in Legend of Zelda means that a lot of these stories might become like myths and legends throughout time, but they still happened. They still happen in some way, shape, or form because we see references to Ocarina of Time in Twilight Princess. We see references to Skyward Sword and Breath of the Wild, and like we see all these references and we see that make sense. But with Tears of the Kingdom, we see references, but we don't see it lining up. So what do you think about that?
It's definitely very confusing, but I think there might be some weight to your theory because
the Zonai creating the new, or converging the timelines. Yes, I think. Is it something that you know that I don't?
No.
Okay.
I'm going based off of the Dragon's Tears memories and the beginning of the game and the lore we get from that.
Oh, because you see Rauru on the thing and he's got the sacred stones. Yeah.
And even Zelda talks about when she's looking at that mural for the first time, she's like, oh, I thought this was all myths and legends, but it's actually true. So I think if the Zonai were the ones who, because they're referred to as like these godlike figures, and which would explain why we've probably never heard about them before.
Yeah.
Unless there's
we thought they were barbarians.
Right. And that's it's really funny how you go back and look at Breath of the Wild and the way that game talks about the Zonai, of how they are this barbaric magic tribe that disappeared into the sky. It's like, okay, how, like, where are the rest of the Zonai? Because according to the game and the memories, Rauru and Minoru are the only two Zonai
they're
left.
The ones,
So what happened to all the other Zonai? Where did they go? Surely they were not the only two this entire time. So
even Ganondorf says the same thing.
Of like, Ganondorf says, like, all your people are gone, you're the only ones left. Okay, what does that mean? Like, So I think if they did reconverge the timelines, I think there could be a scenario where it essentially reset. Like, all of the prior games happen. Skyward Sword, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, like, all those games still happen.
Because Rauru, like, probably descended from the heavens, and he's like, hey, that guy from back then, that owl guy, he's got a cool name. I'm gonna call myself Rauru because
name.
of that guy. Yeah.
And I think...
Yeah, because it's not the same guy. Because the thing is, I think the devs called him Rauru because he is the Sage of Light in Tears of the Kingdom, just like he was in Ocarina of Time.
But I don't think it's the same character.
Oh, no, it's not the same character. No, it isn't. But I think that's why they chose the name, to have that correlation. Like, this guy's a Sage of Light, this guy's a Sage of Light. We'll both call them Rauru to have that, like...
That connection, that familiarity.
Like, yeah.
And
but they're not the same person.
If the Zonai really did reconverge the timelines and bring them back together, I think you could explain, okay, well, when it came back together, a la Xenoblade, the world resets. When you bring it back together. And that's how you can say, okay, well, this is the first king of Hyrule. This is the first queen of Hyrule. We'll somehow explain Sonya is a descendant of the goddess Hylia, or she is the goddess Hylia, just with a different name. And now we've recontextualized the world, and everything kind of starts to make sense. Because if you don't do that, this doesn't make any sense. Because... if a male Gerudo is born every 100 years, where's the male Gerudo in Breath of the Wild? Was there no male Gerudo born because the previous one that was born is stuck under Hyrule Castle? That was my theory for the longest time. The reason we didn't see Ganondorf in Breath of the Wild, knowing now that he was under Hyrule Castle.
Oh, and you were right.
They couldn't reincarnate.
Yeah. Because he was alive.
Exactly.
He wasn't dead. He was just suspended.
He's essentially in a coma. Like, he's not alive, but he's not dead.
So, did you have that theory before the 2019 Breath of the Wild 2 trailer?
No. That theory was built after that trailer came out. And I actually recorded and started editing a video, but then I never put it out. My theory on the identity of the hand before we knew it was Rauru was that it was the past hero. And that past hero was a Zonai, and he sacrificed himself to keep Ganondorf underground until they could actually stop him, because that's all they could do. And I was pretty much right, except for I just had the wrong person as the right arm. I just needed to put Rauru in there, and I would have been pretty on the money.
The thing is, it's really interesting that they went with the first king as the source of the hand or the arm instead of the first hero in this new timeline.
Because there's no hero mentioned at all. There's no hero there present during that battle with Ganondorf.
But the thing is that this Ganondorf that we see is not Calamity Ganon.
Nope.
So my thing is, Ganondorf is sealed. 100 years later is the first Calamity. And then that princess and hero on the tapestry defeat the Calamity. Unfortunately, because of this game, they don't matter anymore, which is kind of sad. Yeah, but it would have been nice if there was lore about them and being like, hey, these are the people who fought in the first Calamity. It's your ancestors or whatever. Like Sonia's descendants or Zelda's ancestors or whatever. But no, they go even farther back, which is interesting. I didn't think they would go this far back, but that's cool. And another thing is, I didn't think the Zonai would be gods. When I first started the game and they were like, Zonai are the gods, they're like these divine beings, and I was like, I thought the Zonai were the equivalent of the Sheikah and the Yiga, but more affiliated with like the side of courage, you know? Like how Sheikah are affiliated with the side of wisdom, Yiga are affiliated with power, Zonai would be affiliated with courage.
Right.
But the Zonai are gods. Like, they're literally deities. Like, on the level of... Yeah.
Here's what I would say is, I don't think the Zonai are gods necessarily. I think they're, from the perspective of Hylians, they're gods because they're very skilled with magic. Because in Breath of the Wild, that's how they're described, is they're very strong magic users. And to a Hylian who's never seen magic or like doesn't have a really strong connection with magic, anything of that caliber. Like, just if we assume that all of the Zonai can use all 4 of Link's abilities, right? Ascend, Recall. Well, Recall technically isn't a Zonai ability.
Recall is the
Sonya
Sage of Time's
Zelda's
ability. Yeah, it is the ability of the Sage of Time. Yes,
so,
because each Sage, as we can see, which you know more of, each Sage has an ability. Say anything. Yeah, each Sage has an ability, whereas I think Fuse, Ultra Hand, and Ascend come from Rauru. Yeah, because Rauru is the top guy. He's the head honcho, so he's got more abilities than anyone else does.
Yeah, so I think if you look at the magic of like, oh my gosh, they can phase through ceilings, or they can stick anything together, or like they can fuse these 2 weapons together. Yes, those would, like, that level of magic would be seen as more god tier to a normal Hylian. Because I think the lore that's established of like, the gods we have in Zelda are the 3 gods that are, what is it, Furore, Din, and Nehru. And then there's Hylia, which I never really understood how Hylia fit into the picture.
Okay, so Hylia was basically I don't know if Hylia was created by the 3 golden goddesses, but Hylia was at least appointed by the 3 golden goddesses to say, you are chosen to protect the Triforce. And she was the protector of the Triforce, and the one who appointed her chosen hero to fight for her and fight the evil so she can protect the Triforce, and he can use the Triforce to combat this evil. But now, my biggest wish in Tears of the Kingdom, not my biggest wish, but like a wish I had, was like, I really, really, really hope they talk about the Triforce.
I was going to mention that.
Triforce in Breath of the Wild. No one mentions it.
It would literally did not, like, you see when Zelda uses her power, you see the Triforce come out of her hand, and that's like the only mention of the Triforce we get.
That's the only appearance. And there's no mention of it. No one says the words Triforce.
There's
in
no
Breath
like,
of the Wild
oh hey,
and Tears of the Kingdom.
You're like they talk about, oh, Link has courage and Zelda has wisdom, and there's the 3 springs, one for each aspect of the Triforce, but they never actually mention it. And I thought in Tears of the Kingdom, because we have Zelda, Link, and Ganondorf back in a game together for the first time since Twilight Princess, we would have all those things together. And so far, we don't. And they're leaning more into the secret stones being the amplifier of power as opposed to the Triforce, which feels really
It's funny because I don't know if you saw my tweet this morning, but do you remember when everyone was saying, oh, Tears of the Kingdom, that title isn't a spoiler? I didn't think it was a spoiler because if you go back to the original quote that Nintendo said, they never said anything about it being a spoiler. They just said about, like, hints to the story. But then we, like, saw Tears of the Kingdom's title, we saw the murals, and we're like, oh, those things are the tears, right? First of all, they're not tears. We now know that they're secret stones. The tears come from Zelda, who is the light dragon. Oh my god.
Which, oh my gosh, the lore implications from that alone. Like, we talked about it a little bit on Twitter.
Yeah.
Were the other 3 dragons also
humanoids? You know who I think they are? I think they're the other sages. I think it's the Goron sage, the Gerudo sage, and the Zora sage, I think. I don't know. Probably.
It could be.
But
really
then what about the Rito sage?
Precedent.
What about the Rito sage? What about Minoru? Oh, wait, Minoru, like, okay, here's the thing. From what I didn't notice this. Another friend noticed this, actually. Another friend noticed this and told me that you can see Minoru's essence going into the Purapad. So Minoru's in there, and maybe she still is. I don't know. You definitely know more.
I have the answer, but I won't say anything because it is really cool how they do that. I will say I don't think the dragons are the sages, just because I don't know.
Yeah.
I've done at least one of the other normal, like one of the other 4 dungeons that isn't the Rito one, and they all, like, the end where the sage talks to you, they all kind of play out the same way.
Yeah.
Of like, oh, here's what happened in this, fight with the Demon King, and then, Zelda came and told us to help Link, and now we're here helping Link. Like, it's pretty straightforward. I do think I'm interested to see how they handle this, because they've established multiple times in multiple memories, hey, if you eat this tear, you become a dragon.
You're going to lose yourself.
You will lose yourself and become the immortal dragon. Which, if you think about the line, you will lose yourself, it then recontextualizes Zelda's line where she says, Link, you must find me. Not necessarily speaking of you have to find me in time, you have to find the me that is lost when I ate this tear and became the dragon.
That's insane. And the thing is, as much like we've spent so long kind of like poking at holes in the story and the lore, but I will say, despite a lot of the lore related continuity errors, errors in quotes and like plot holes in quotes, because this is again the Legend of Zelda, despite all of that, this story is fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
It is written phenomenally. It is acted phenomenally by all the voice actors. The cutscenes are directed and animated and done so well. This story is leaps and bounds better than Breath of the Wild ever was. And the thing is, like, we were talking a little earlier about Mio dying and, like, the whole thing. Like, we didn't think it would happen, and it happened. And the same goes for Zelda becoming the Light Dragon, because you get that hint as early as the third memory with Minoru, and she's like, to become an immortal dragon is to lose oneself, and you're like, why did you say that?
Why'd you put that line in there?
Yeah,
that line didn't have to be there.
Like, yeah, and Rauru even follows up and he's like, is this the only way that you can go back to your time? There has to be another way. And I'm like, stop, no. And here's the thing. This was kind of spoiled for me because of the leaks, and it wasn't like I didn't read the leak saying Zelda becomes a Light Dragon. No, the thing I read from the leak is basically how you get the Master Sword, and I haven't even done that yet, so don't tell me too much, but basically they said you get the Master Sword from the Light Dragon, and I was like, wait, if you get the Master Sword from the Light Dragon, and Zelda's in the past, and she has the Master Sword, what does that mean? So I put two and two together, yeah.
I was really trying to figure out how Zelda was going to get back to the future. And you see like Sonya talk about and explain kind of how the recall power works. Like, oh, you have to think about, an object and where it's been and like all that stuff. And I was like, okay, so she's going to master her recall ability and then recall herself and the Master Sword back to the future. And then she's going to hand it off to Link, and then she's going to join the other sages, and then they're all going to go fight Ganondorf. Because now, unless a giant dragon is going to show up at the final boss, we're missing the Sage of Light.
Yeah.
Because Zelda was our Sage of Light, and now she's a dragon. So unless
Zelda was our Sage of Time.
Oh, you're right. Sage of Time,
yes.
Not Light.
Well, that was also weird because Rauru is the Sage of Light,
and
but
we don't have another Sage of Light.
Huh?
We don't have a Sage of Light either.
Yes. I would argue it could be Link because he has Raru's arm, but the thing is, but another thing is both Rauru and Sonya continuously were telling Zelda, you have
both
power over time, but you have the power to dispel evil with light. And I was like, how can she be both sages at once, even though she's more of the time sage?
I would argue she's more of the light sage because that leans into her powers from Breath of the Wild.
And she is the Dragon of Light now.
So...
Also, where the heck was this dragon in Breath of the Wild? I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
They probably didn't think about it. It's fine.
The lore explanation is it was above the cloud barrier. Because when you jump out of the Shrine of Awakening or whatever it's called, and you're diving down, you see her as a dragon floating in the sky.
The light dragon comes up,
and then she's the one who breaks the cloud barrier so you can go down to Hyrule. What I want to know is if Zelda's a dragon, how does she keep appearing as a human in Hyrule? Like,
Yeah,
you run around all these different
yeah.
places, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we saw Princess Zelda. She told us to do this thing." Or like, you go to the regions, and they're like, "Oh yeah, Princess Zelda like did this thing."
Yeah, that's a weird thing about this game is you can do a lot of things in order. I did a lot of the memories out of order, so that one thing was confusing, and like this morning I went back and watched them in order and it made more sense. But also having done the memories and then seeing Zelda in this like ghostly, if like weird specter form, and the way she talks during that Blood Moon cutscene it's very haunting.
I'm starting
and
to
weird
think
and
that's not like it. It
She's
sounded
lost
very
herself.
off the first time I heard it. I was like, has she been like possessed by Ganondorf or something? And then I got to that cutscene where we see Puppet Zelda attack Sonya.
yeah.
And I was like, oh, maybe she did get. And I'd also seen, I don't know if you've seen it, but
that was very temporary. That was
the
just
mural or like the art that's on the back of the collector's edition where you
Yes.
see Ganondorf and like the
Ganondorf,
Malice wave is coming over, and that person there, I thought that was Zelda. And I
think
thought,
it's Sonya.
oh, well, no, it is Sonya now.
Yeah.
Because the game explains, oh yeah, and then the Demon King killed the queen and took her secret stone.
Yeah.
But I thought it was Zelda, and I was like building
Yeah.
this theory in my head of like, okay, so maybe he's corrupted Zelda, and now we have to save Zelda. And another interesting thing is like the memories are optional, which also means the Master Sword is optional again. And I don't know how they're gonna I don't know how they're gonna explain that unless before you get to the final boss, they make the memories mandatory so you can go get the Master Sword. And then the Master Sword is mandatory for this fight.
Since it was a main quest, I assumed that it would be mandatory, but you're right. In Breath of the Wild, none of the main quests were mandatory in Breath of the Wild. And I don't know how it is in Tears of the Kingdom because it doesn't seem like you can go to the final boss immediately, even though you did say that you approached it.
Okay.
But
you can. You're not gonna win, but you can.
did you start the fight at least?
Yeah. And I got my
God.
butt kicked.
Oh my god.
And I don't want to say anything else because it's such a good fight. But it's actually like, even if I go do all 4 regions and like do everything you're supposed to do story-wise, I still might actually struggle with it. And that's what has me excited. It's because Calamity Ganon felt way too easy. Especially if you have all 4 champion abilities and they just drain him all the way down to half health. And it's like, oh, you've already done half the work for me. This doesn't feel like that.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see how it all ties together. Because if the memories are optional, you never find out that Zelda becomes a dragon. You never get the Master Sword, which is the only sword that can seal the darkness and destroy the Demon King. So it makes me feel like it is going to be kind of important. Like you won't be able to actually fight Ganondorf without it. So, I don't know. I guess we'll find out as we continue and beat the game.
Yeah.
But now
I'm getting sidetracked by everything else.
Me too.
Shrines,
I'm
towers,
trying.
the depths. I was Zonite farming the entire, like I was playing a bit earlier today, and the entire time I was playing, I was basically just farming Zonite, and then I went up into the sky to get a steering wheel. That was the only 2 things I did today. Farm Zonite and find a steering wheel. You never think you would, like, if I told that to myself like 10 years back, like the Zelda fan I was 10 years back, if I had told him like in 2023 in the Zelda game that releases then you'll be farming for ore and looking for a steering wheel, I wouldn't have believed my future self.
Yeah. If you told 4 years ago me when I first watched that trailer for like the reveal trailer what this game was going to be, I would have been like, no way. Really?
Yeah.
Like it lived up to the hype of like the insanely high expectations we had. It is actually meeting those expectations and kind of exceeding them.
I was still doubting that we'd get a massive underground until the leaks happened, because a lot of people who I talked to were like, hey man, I don't think the underground's gonna be legit, like do you really think it's gonna happen? I'm like, I'm hoping it does, I'm hoping. And then we got the depths. And the depths are probably my favorite area in the game. it's so much fun to be down there, and like I enjoy the thrill and the fear factor. It reminds me of like Elden Ring and like a From Software game, so that's a lot of fun.
I got really excited when I watched a video on like the leaks, but it was only gameplay stuff. I have not seen anything leaked from the story. I stayed very far away from that, but I was pretty okay with the gameplay stuff.
Yeah.
When I watched that video, and the video was like, I'm happy to confirm there is an underground, and the map is the same size as the overworld, like Hyrule map, I was like, oh my god, this is it. Like, this is what we wanted for an underground map.
Are you feeling a little, I wouldn't say underwhelmed, but do you feel like you're exploring the surface and the depths more than the Sky Islands? Because I feel that way. Yeah.
I do feel
and
like
Sky Islands aren't bad a bit. Yeah.
No, they're not bad. And Colin brought this up. I was talking to him a little bit earlier today. And we both agreed on this, is that there were more Sky Islands that felt like the Great Sky Island, that had more of the multi-environment and had a bunch of stuff to do, as opposed to just the tiny little like islands here
archipelagos.
And there. Yeah.
Do you mean you wish you had those, right?
Yes, like there were more of those bigger, substantial islands.
I literally actually just said that in a video that I was editing today. So yeah, I felt the same way. Like the archipelagos are nice. Some have like really cool puzzles, but it's not bad. It's not bad by any means. It's still fun to like play around in the sky, fly on gliders, and solve all these puzzles and find all these things. And there's even like this big storm cloud in the Faron region I haven't even gone inside of, which I'm very curious to go into. Have you been in there?
I have.
Okay, because do you know who Limcube is? I really like Limcube's videos and his content. He like said in his latest video, he's like, don't go in there until you're ready to. And I was like, I don't think I'm ready, but I want to go in there like
I went in there off of Colin told me to, because of what's in there. And he was like, oh, there's something really cool in there, you should go. And I'm like, no, you're right. So I dove in there without a plan yesterday. And when you get in there, it's raining so hard you can't see anything. Like, it's very hard to navigate. So I ended up building like a hot air raft, because there's a certain point where you can glitch it, where there's
a hot air raft.
There's a certain threshold where you're in the sky and you're just high enough above the clouds, but it hasn't registered that you're in the sky yet, where you can see everything throughout the storm.
Oh.
So I kept floating up and like surveying and kind of floating in that range. And then I would dive to somewhere, land there, and repeat the process. And I eventually found what I was looking for. But it took me a while of like doing this. And as you get closer to the thing, it starts to sense that that's what you're doing. And they like just decreased that range of what you need to see. So it was a very interesting way of getting there.
That is weird. I have no idea how to approach this.
Yeah, it was actually really hard, and I enjoyed that it's hard.
Yeah, I will say this: the way I'm playing the game is I'm not creating as much vehicles as I thought I would, because I kind of knew going into the game I wouldn't be doing that much, because I'm not the vehicle kind of guy. But what I'm looking for is I'm looking for contraptions that I enjoy using and saving them into my history, because the fact that auto build exists is amazing, because otherwise I would have only been using Ultra Hand for shrines. Because that's me. I don't I enjoy creating with Ultra Hand. It's fun, but I'm not the kind of guy to like make all the mechs and be like, hey, look what I made. I'll make something for my use, my personal use, and I'll just have it as that. So I am very curious to see how the rest of a lot of these other things are implemented within the story in different scenarios and different situations that I have to use them in. But I'm really enjoying the game so far. Very good. Definitely lived up to my expectations. The only complaint or negative I would say, because a teaser for a new video I'm making, it's basically like 5 positives and 5 negatives of Tears of the Kingdom. The 5 negatives are very nitpicky, except for one. the one that isn't really nitpicky is like the difficulty and the combat, because I really hope that in the next game they really elevate the combat and make it significantly better and more engaging, because fusing is fun. Fusing is a lot of fun, but having come from like, I literally, like the week leading up to Tears of the Kingdom, I was playing Dark Souls 3 and really enjoying that kind of combat flow. And like, I don't want them to make a Zelda Souls-like or anything, but just have that like feedback and that response and that flow. I think that would be better. And if the difficulty was balanced, that's the most important thing, because the difficulty feels very weird in this game for many reasons. And I'm at a point where I'm okay with the difficulty, with the armor sets and the health I have and the food I have, but it still feels slightly unbalanced compared to Breath of the Wild and other games I've played. Because even other games I played, the difficulty is up there, but it's a fair kind of difficulty.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, because I played Elden Ring last year, loved it a lot, but there was a lot of times I was like, oh, I know why I died here. Even though it sucks that I died here, I know what I can do to like fix that. Like when that attack comes in the next round, I can do this and like predict it or whatever. In Tears of the Kingdom, sometimes I just die and I'm like, I've zero clue why I died.
I just died.
And I have no clue how to like predict that in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I love that the game is harder. I genuinely do.
Yeah.
I love that, you know, I can see a Gleeok and be like, you know what? No, I'm not going to go over there. There was not a single enemy, and maybe this is because, you know, we had Breath of the Wild for so long. There was not a single enemy in that game where I didn't feel like I could walk up and kill it. Whereas here, there's so much more variety of like, oh, there's a Gleeok, and there's Lynels, and there's, you know, there's still Hinoxes and Stone Taluses, and like there's still all of
Gloom
these
hands
reoccurring. Those are freaking terrifying. Have you actually
did
killed
you
them
defeat
yet?
One?
Yes. So
Yeah.
you've gotten to the next thing after you kill the hand.
Yes, yeah, I fought Phantom Ganon.
Yeah. Dude.
But
that
I
scared the
also
crap out of me.
I've only fought him once, and I fought him at a very interesting location, which I won't say.
I have fought him 3 times so far, one of which being in the depths under Hyrule Castle. And Nintendo, sneaky Nintendo, if you get far enough under Hyrule Castle, you get a little message that says, the sage's vow cannot reach you here. And it turns off your sage abilities, and you can't summon them.
Shit.
And I was like, oh no. So now it's all me. Okay, cool. So I will eventually go back under Hyrule Castle. I literally, like, I had an hour yesterday, and I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to dive under Hyrule Castle. And I went up to the lookout landing tower. I jumped up, and I just dove right in. And I was like, whatever's down here is down here. I think I died like 5 times. Because what's under there is just bonkers difficult. Like, it's insane.
A friend of mine has gone down there, and they're very, like, they had some very interesting things to say about it, but they didn't spoil anything, but they're like, whatever is down here is like very, like, I have a lot of questions regarding this.
Yeah. And I like that the gloom changes up combat in the depths. And it's not just don't step on it, it's don't get hit by gloom enemies because they'll afflict you with it.
Yeah,
and you can't recover those hearts
debuff,
yet.
Yeah.
And I really like that because it keeps things fresh. It's like, okay, well, now instead of having 10 hearts, I may only have 5. And that's what I have to work with. And if I get hit again, I'm only going to have 3. And then, like, from there, like, there's a place underground where you can fight a Lynel. And
I did see a Lynel in the underground.
I kept getting hit by the Lynel, and I kept losing hearts, and it made the fight more and more difficult because I could take less hits because I didn't have as many hearts. So I like that they've, one, included more new enemies. I know there are, like, some of them are returning, like, oh, we've seen the Gleeoks, and, like, you know, we've seen those enemies before. And there's the constructs that are new. The Flux constructs are really cool. That's a really cool boss fight.
That's a very fun boss fight, yeah.
And I like that they've brought those in and made the game harder and added these new things. So in 6 years, while we're waiting for the next game, we're not gonna master the combat as quickly as we did with Breath of the Wild. And I love that. Yeah. Because that was one of my major gripes was The enemies after 6 years all feel the same. Bokoblins aren't scary. Like, Lynels aren't scary. Like, I do want to feel a challenge when I play a game.
Yeah, and with the fuse mechanic, we're gonna find so many different combinations we never thought of, we never dreamed of, we never imagined, and that's the beauty of this game. There's so much that you can do that you never thought you could do. Because I literally saw someone like create this laser, and like, you know how the lasers like go around like this? This laser was like a wave. It was like a wave beam.
I've seen some pretty insane
like, this thing looked like something you would see in Metroid, just like a spray of lasers, and it just annihilates a level 4 Hinox in like 2 seconds.
I've seen like what? I've seen
it's
people
only been
use
it's
Ultra
been less
Hand.
than a week.
We're going on a week today, the day we're recording it. I've seen people make like airships or like assault drop ships to attack enemy camps. I'm like, I don't know how you have the like limitless creativity, I guess, to
it's insane.
Make something like that, and it makes me look forward to reaching that level of mastery with Ultra Hand, where I'm like, I can build all of these things and I have enough, and I think that's also going to help the longevity of the game. Is
100%.
If we're seeing these crazy creations less than a week in, imagine what we're gonna see a year from now, 2 years from now. Like, how insane is it going to get? And I think that has me really excited. Maybe not like what obviously what I'll make, but also like I saw a lot of clips last month of people putting the Master Cycle on a platform and doing a backflip and killing guardians with arrows, and I'm like, I don't know how you do that. How have you figured that out? And it's just what the Zelda team has cooked up with this game is amazing. And I think it was Aonuma said in an interview, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are the new foundation for what Zelda games will look like in the future. Kind of like how Ocarina of Time set the mold for Zelda games up to Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild is now the new standard. And if these are the games they're going to put out,
stale. You know?
No, I agree. I think it's weird because open world is definitely the trend right now.
I think about like Fallout and Skyrim, like Elder Scrolls. Elder Scrolls has evolved. I've heard people say Oblivion was better than Morrowind, Skyrim was better than Oblivion, whereas some people still prefer Oblivion. But like with Fallout, I've heard people say there's some stagnation, some similarities. Assassin's Creed, there's definitely stagnation and similarity. Other Ubisoft like Far Cry, there's incredible stagnation and similarity from, again, I don't play a lot of these games, but it's what I've been hearing, and it's a lot of negative sentiment about open world games because of how formulaic they are and stuff. Zelda is anything but that. Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, Elden Ring, Xenoblade, they're anything but that. But it is how they approach it and how they make the future games different. That is when I will be, like, when that worry will be satiated and satisfied, you know?
Yeah. No, I agree. I think where they go with Zelda from here is an entirely different conversation for another podcast. Because I could go on for a long time about that. But I think if they can take what they've done here and have the traditional dungeons and have the more unique bosses, like, that has been so refreshing for me that all of the dungeons feel different. All of the bosses in each of those dungeons feels different. And just they brought back actual boss music. Like, that was a big thing for me.
I've only done one boss and one dungeon so far. I will say the dungeon was good. I still felt Divine Beast vibes, but not heavy Divine Beast vibes. It was good. It was a good dungeon. I still miss my super traditional Zelda dungeon, like Stone Tower, Arbiter Grounds, Ancient Cistern. That probably won't come back in a very traditional form, but I still miss it, you know?
Yeah.
And then the boss was fantastic, though. The music, when it, like, the music got, like, bigger and bigger with each portion you complete of the dungeon.
Yes.
And then the boss fight was a climax with the music and bombastic like explosions and everything. It was great. But I want to ask you very vaguely, how do the other dungeons compare to the Rito dungeon? Without spoiling much.
I've done the Rito and the Zora one, and I've done a third one that I won't say for spoilers.
Okay.
Because it is kind of, it's not one that they openly talk about. And I'll leave it at that. But, and I just started the Gerudo one. Right now, the Gerudo one is my favorite. I haven't finished it and done the boss yet, but the quest leading up to it and going into it, definitely my favorite right now. I definitely see the divine beasts coming from it, and I guess like vague,
with the gates and criminals and
yeah, like having to, there's a set number of objectives to complete, and you can complete those objectives in any order, and once you complete all of those, you go to the main area and you try to activate it, and then it triggers the boss. If that's the formula they found that worked, great. At least these don't feel like I can speedrun them in 15 minutes. Because on stream, I did the entirety of Va Meadow in 19 minutes.
Oh,
these dungeons don't feel like I can do the entire thing in 19 minutes.
And the puzzles are more fun.
Yes, I love the puzzles. And like when I played Skyward Sword, that was one of my favorite parts of it, is all the dungeons felt different. All the bosses were unique. They each had their own way of fighting them. You can't, like with the Blight Ganons, you can kind of fight them all in the same way. Shoot them in the eye, wait for them to fall, hit them a little bit. You know, if you do Thunderblight first and have Urbosa's Fury, it makes all of the other ones easier because you just get free damage. But these all feel different. Like you have to have a different strategy for doing each one, and that is specifically tailored to, obviously, the champion descendant that's with you, because the dungeons kind of teach you how to use their abilities, which I think is great.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's essentially like a giant shrine for a brand new ability. And I really love that. As for how the water dungeon compares to the Rito one, I think the water one might be the weakest.
Okay.
Not saying it's bad. I still enjoyed it. I just think out of the 2.5, I'll say, that I've done of the main 4, it definitely feels like the weakest. Because I really enjoyed, I know you've done the wind one. I really enjoyed getting to that dungeon.
Yeah,
and the whole process.
That was fun.
And I like how they've extended
ships and the balancing and Ascend. I was using Ascend a lot. That was fun. Yeah.
I like how they extended that process, because getting to the divine beasts felt very simple. Like, for example, if you're going to
this felt
Valmeadow,
natural, you know?
Yes.
This felt natural. Like Tulin was like, I thought it would be like, hey, stop what you're doing right now. We're gonna go up there. But Tulin was like, hey, you want to just climb up higher and higher? And I was like, yeah, let's go. And then slowly I was like, wait, I'm going to the dungeon.
Yeah, like you're on your way to the
time.
Dungeon.
And like Tulin doesn't say anything. He's like, oh, it's cold up here. You want to keep going? And I'm like, yeah, I thought it would be like this whole like stop everything you're doing right now. And like, you know, when like in the Varuto quest, it was like, stop what you're doing, Link, get on my back, and we're gonna go fight the elephant robot thing. Like, it's not like that. It felt more natural, so that was good.
And when I say they extended the process, that's what I mean, is like, to get into the Divine Beast was, you know, hey, go get 20 shock arrows. Oh, you already have 20 shock arrows? All right, come meet me at this place. We're gonna go, you know, break in, and then there you go, you're in. Whereas this is like, okay, you have to actually get to the dungeon and then do the dungeon. Yeah. It's not like getting there, like, it's not like, oh, I'm there, and now, okay, give me the boss fight in the tier, like, or the secret stone, not the tier. So I'm really enjoying that, and I can't wait to see. And from what I've heard, Melina has done the Goron, like the fire temple, and I'm like, okay, I didn't really care for Va Rodania in Breath of the Wild, and she's like, it's a lot better in this game. So I'm very interested to do that one.
I've heard the dungeon is good. I've heard the boss isn't that good, but that's just what I've heard.
I've heard the Gerudo boss is the hardest one.
Yes, I've heard that.
And I'm like, okay. Because
I know what most of the bosses look like, and the Gerudo boss looks like it's gonna, like, wreck stuff up.
Yeah,
so,
Man.
The Gerudo boss looks, like, intimidating, so that's why I'm excited to fight it.
I will say, the 2 bosses I've done, like the wind and the water boss, they didn't feel very difficult. And I think that's okay, because there's the overworld mini bosses that are difficult.
Yeah, we were talking about that, yeah.
Like the Gleeok is very difficult. Lionels are a lot more difficult. I was talking about it on our first impressions episode, but I actually died to a Bokoblin because they added a 3rd strike in the Bokoblin attack animation. It goes left, right, and now down. So I was used to the left, right, and I put down my shield to attack, and he did down and killed me. And I was like, oh, okay. So even the enemies that I thought I knew how to fight, now I don't know how to fight them.
Yeah,
so you kind of have to rethink.
There,
and the AI is so much better in this game, because as I also said on that episode, enemies will gang up on you now. It's no longer 3 Bokoblins stand by and wait for you to finish hitting the one you're at. No, they will all attack you at once.
Oh, and if you're in the depths, everyone's gonna come at you and, like, remind you why you shouldn't have come down here.
Exactly. So it's just, they've done their due diligence in making this game as amazing as it can be, and I can't wait to finish it and just see how the story connects to everything.
I will say, just like Breath of the Wild, once I finish the main quest, I won't be done with this game. I'm going to be doing rest of the shrines, rest of the caves. I'm going to be exhausting this game until I'm bored and then go back to my backlog.
Have you... Okay, first of all, have you gone to Terrytown yet?
Yes, I have. I started the quest there, but I haven't continued it.
Okay.
The one with Hudson's daughter.
Yeah. So I finished that quest. And I won't say anything about it, but what you unlock after that, I don't know how I want to put it. Have you seen anything with the dream home? Like any of the signs or any of their advertising of like, oh, we'll build you a dream home? Because I think she talks about it at the beginning of that quest where she's like, oh, usually we can build you a dream home, but we're busy with this thing. And that's your prompt to finish.
I haven't seen that, no.
Okay.
Okay.
I won't say anything else. The dream home, I'm going to spend hours on that alone.
Is it like a Animal Crossing customization thing?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
That is the most accurate comparison I can make to it. It is Animal Crossing.
That's cool.
And in the best way possible.
They have so many games in one game. They have Minecraft, they have Zelda, they have Animal Crossing.
Yeah, they just like, all right, we're going to fuse it all together.
They have Xenoblade with the story.
They
have everything.
I love, and this is one of the bigger things I wanted, and we'll start to wrap up here, is I wanted the side quests in this game to mean something. Because in Breath of the Wild, the side quests didn't really mean anything. The only ones that did were like Terrytown and the shrine quests, and there were a couple other ones that were like okay to do. I've already done more side quests in this game than I have in Breath of the Wild. Like, I don't know if you've done any of the Lucky Clove Gazette and going around.
I haven't done too much of those, but I've done the Heteno Village one, the mayoral election.
Oh yeah, I did that one too.
Yeah. That's a very simple one, but I really enjoyed it. It was just really wholesome and fun because it was like a side quest chain, and it was like one side quest leads to another, and then it ends in this like silly climax, but it's fun.
And you also get the ability to take the hood off.
Yes,
that's the main reason I did it.
Why I did it, yeah.
Because I was like, I had to Google. I was like, okay, how do you take the hood down? And I watched a game explain video, and they were like, oh, you do this quest chain. I was like, okay, cool. That's all I needed to know. I don't need to know how to solve the quest chain. I just need to know how to do it.
You take the hood off, but you still keep the
ponytail
hair tied up. I wanted the hair down with the hood off, but whatever, it's fine. I don't really care. But my thing is, have you played Majora's Mask?
No.
Okay, because I still think the best side quest in the entire Zelda series is in Majora's Mask. And when everyone says Terrytown is good, Terrytown is good, Terrytown's good. Terrytown's good in Breath of the Wild. It's fun. But that Terrytown quest compared to the Anju Cafe quest and Majora's Mask, I think it pales in comparison. Like, if you ever do play Majora's Mask, do that side quest. But if you choose not to, look into what that side quest is, because story-wise, like, I wouldn't say, like, story in terms of the main story, but the story that side quest tells is one of the best side quests I've ever seen in a game. And plus, it uses the gameplay mechanic in a very cool and unique way. Yeah.
All right.
So
I definitely want to go back and play it. I have it on the 3DS. I just haven't played it.
Yeah. Yeah, give it a shot. It's really good. Like, Terrytown is still very good, very rewarding once you get to the end and all that, but it's still in the back of my mind. I was like, Anjun Cafe is better. And because, like, yeah.
With Tears of the Kingdom, I like that, like you said, quests lead to other quests. Like, there's a very natural progression. And there's certain ones, like I did one of the Lucky, I don't know if it's the Lucky Clove Gazette or whatever, but
Is it with Pen?
Yes. I did one at the stable because you're supposed to go around and find all the stables, which, okay, well, now there's incentive for me to go out and find all the stables, but I did one that was like, oh, these, chefs are lost and you have to go find them. And then when you go find them, they're like, oh, you have to cook us this food. And then you cook them the food and then they come back to the stable. And when they come back to the stable, 2 of them will give you individual side quests. And one of them is like, cool. All right, you got to find all these cuckoos and put them in the fence. And like, I spent an hour doing side quests the other night just because I kept getting lost in this chain of side quests, and that's something I never would have done in Breath of the Wild. And I am.
Have you done the one where you get the Hylian civilians to help you out fight the monsters?
No, I haven't found that one yet.
I haven't found that either.
But I have to find it.
I haven't found it either. I want to look for that and find it.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, because that one looks like a lot of fun.
I think I'm gonna end up. What's probably going to end up happening is I'll finish the 4 main temples, and then I'll end up doing a bunch of side quests before I inevitably go and fight Ganondorf. Not that I'll be like, oh, well, now I'm done with the game. Like, no, I'm absolutely, as soon as I finish the game, going to be like, wow, what an amazing story. Anyway, back to the depths. I got to finish mapping that out. I got to finish all these side quests. I got to do my dream home. Like, there's still going to be stuff to do, and maybe I'll take a break for a little bit just so I don't get burned out, but we'll see where I'm at.
Yeah, because I played Elden Ring for like a good 50 hours last year, and then I got a little bored and like burned out, and then I had to play some other games. I was like, I miss my traditional JRPGs. I need to play like something turn-based, and I need to play some other game, and like I miss my Switch, so I went back to that. But then once I like felt ready to go back to Elden Ring, I went back into it and I was like, oh, this is fun, I want to continue and all that. But with Zelda is Zelda. Like, Zelda is my #1 favorite gaming series of all time. I love it. I think you can see some of my Zelda posters in the back. I love Zelda so much. So I keep telling my friends, I'm like, this is the game I'm going to play for the rest of the year until I find something else that I want to play, or until I'm done with the game.
Yeah. What's so interesting is Nintendo hasn't revealed anything for the second half of the year. So like right now I don't have anything else to play from Nintendo. I don't have anything else I'm looking forward to. I'm not interested in Pikmin, really. I'm not either. Too much. I know Colin is, but I'm not. And I'm like, I'll just keep playing Zelda. I'm not too. Like, yeah. I know other people are very excited and very into Pikmin, but I'm not particularly very interested in it because I'll still be playing Zelda and maybe some other stuff. Yeah. I'm really still holding out for possible Metroid Prime 4 release this year. I don't think it'll happen, but if it happens, I will. If Metroid Prime 4 releases this year, 2023 will be the greatest gaming year for me personally, because Future Redeemed, Tears of the Kingdom, Metroid Prime 4, and then like other stuff is possibly happening. Like, we might be getting Persona 3 remake. We might be I want it.
Yeah, Spider-Man 2 is happening later, and then Final Fantasy 16. I'm not like super hyped for that, but I might still give it a shot. Like this year is even better than last, and last year was amazing because of Elden Ring, God of War, and Xenoblade.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I'm still holding out that maybe we get a Switch 2 this year. I'm on
I
team
think it's
2023.
a possibility.
I'm not like, if it doesn't happen, I won't be heartbroken. But if it does happen, I'll be. I'm kind of like, if it does, great. If it doesn't, okay, cool. I still got Zelda either way. So
I'm just wondering, like, what they're waiting for.
Yeah,
you know?
What does the second half of this year look like?
Yeah.
Are they just going to have a light year of writing ports because they put out Zelda and they're like, okay, well, we got Zelda and Pikmin, and those are going to be our big holiday games because they're going to sales are going to trend up again during the holidays. They're going to Gamescom, and I think it's worth reading into because they haven't gone to Gamescom in 4 years.
And we had the Switch Lite 4 years back at Gamescom.
And they didn't need to go to Gamescom for the OLED. That was not worth going to Gamescom for because it's just a screen. The Switch Lite was like, oh, look, it's a Switch, but smaller.
Yeah, different form factor.
And it's like, okay, well, yeah, we need to get hands on with that. I would also say the OLED was still like not peak COVID, but we were still in the pandemic in 2021, so it was a little, iffy. But now I think they gotta have something. If they're, like they said, they're skipping E3, which not having anything to show could have been code for we just don't want to go, but we don't want to say we don't want to go. Because that would look bad.
There's been conflicting reports from industry insiders, if those are to be believed, but I have no idea. And the thing is, if we don't know anything substantial about the new system by the end of this year, I won't say that I'll be concerned, but I'll be very confused.
Yeah.
Like, significantly very confused.
Like, now feels like the best time. Like, even Shintaro Furukawa said, hey, we've hit market saturation. We're trying to sell people on their second and third Switch. So you kind of have to ask, like, is now the best time to put out a new Switch?
Yeah.
So
yeah, and sales are slowing down. Sales are kind of declining, and I know they might want to beat out the PS2 and stuff, but if they want to keep that momentum, which they really want to do, I think they should at least start talking about it.
If you do a Switch 2 and name it in the right way and make it the same generation as the Switch, you could still count that in the sales.
Yes. If they integrate it with the Nintendo Switch family of systems.
Yeah. If they just call like, it's a Switch 4K.
Yeah. I wouldn't be opposed to that naming scheme. I would be fine with Switch 4K because Switch 2 will make people think,
it's a new generation. We're starting over.
I want to hold on to my Switch or whatever, because I know a lot of people who are still hesitant of backwards compatibility being a thing, or they're like, oh, I'm not ready to move on to next gen. And I'm like, I don't think it's going to be as bad as you think. I think it'll just be a new system. Your account carries over, and like the account will be the same. The games will be the same. Backwards compatible, forwards compatible for a while until they go full on next gen.
I think Nintendo has, and I really hope this is the case. I think they've learned their lesson on hard resetting every console generation, and I think they are just going to be like, okay, we're putting out Metroid Prime 4, and it, runs great on the new Switch, but also it can still run on the old one. And you don't have to upgrade right away, but it's kind of like, it becomes like an iPhone, where you gradually move into the new one, and then let the new one sit for a little bit, and then gradually move into another one.
Yeah.
And you give people time to transfer, and it doesn't feel like, all right,
you do it when you're ready.
We're starting over. Go buy the Wii. All right, we're starting over. Go buy the Wii U. All right, we're starting over. Go buy the 3DS. Like, you have to have that gradual, because there are people who just got an OLED for Zelda who, if they put out a console at the end of the year, they're going to be like, oh, well, I feel burned because I just bought an OLED. It's like, okay. So, I mean, I sat the fence on buying an OLED for the longest time because I was so into like, oh, Switch Pro, Switch Pro, Switch Pro. And then at one point I was like, all right, if there's a Switch Pro, I'll buy it later. I'm just going to take my OLED for now. And I've had my OLED for 2 years.
Yeah, I have had the OLED since Metroid Dread, basically. I got it then, and I traded in my V1. Very, like, I was okay with it, but I was like, yeah, I'm not keeping my V1 Switch if I get money back for the OLED. So I did that, and now I have the OLED, and it's great. And like Tears of the Kingdom looks really good running on this.
Oh, it looks like beautiful.
Yeah, it looks really good on the V1 Switch.
The next system has to have an OLED panel from the start. There's no way they go back to LCD after this. It looks too good.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I have full faith that they'll make the right decision and do good and ride the highs of the Switch.
Yeah. Well, I think that's going to wrap us up here. We kind of got to talk about a little bit of everything.
Yeah. I will say one more thing about Tears of the Kingdom. We talked about all the positive things, but I think we both know what the best thing about Tears of the Kingdom is. And that is Purah's glow up.
True. Thank you.
Yes.
Finally, someone said it. Hey, if Zelda stays as a dragon, I already got a new person to simp for, so it's all good. We got Purah, so Zelda can stay a dragon.
We just warped back to Lookout Landing. We got Purah, so nothing to worry about over there. But
yeah. Well, that's gonna do it for this episode. Thank you, Nishquik, for coming on. Always great to talk about Xenoblade and Zelda and a little bit of Switch too. And now, just why don't you go ahead and tell people where they can find you, what projects you got coming up. Just take a second to plug yourself.
Yeah, so I am Nishquik from Nishquik Pops. Channel is just Nishquik and Pops, and yeah, you can find me on YouTube at that. Twitter is Nish_KELK, and Instagram is Nishquik Pops. My YouTube channel is basically mostly Nintendo, focused on Zelda and Xenoblade right now. I want to talk about more JRPG games as well, because I talked about a lot of RPGs I was playing last year, like a lot of SMT games, Persona, and all that stuff. So I have a feeling that we're going to get a lot of Persona news this summer, and I literally recorded a Persona video a couple weeks back, and I'm just waiting to edit that and put it out, hopefully before we get news on Persona 3. And I'm gonna hopefully ride the hype train on that, but I'm very excited for the future of those 3 series particularly. They're my 3 favorite video game series, and yeah, if you enjoy any of those things, Nintendo, Zelda, Xenoblade, JRPG games, subscribe to the channel and check out the videos. And thank you so much for having me on the podcast, Nick. I heard about you through the Nintendo Prime podcast. I think that's how you found me as well. And then we followed each other on Twitter, and we like the same games and like the same Nintendo stuff, so that's cool, and I'm happy to get a chance to be on the show. Thank you
again. Thanks for coming on. All of that'll be linked in the description. You can go check him out. He does great stuff. I've been watching some of his videos, and they are really good. I really enjoy them. I highly recommend it. As for us, as you know, you can find us here on YouTube at the Joystick Drift Podcast, on Instagram at Joystick Drift Pod. You can check out our gaming channel, Joystick Drift Plays. Colin has started Danganronpa by now, and Melina is continuing Okami, so you can go check those out. And yeah, you can come back next week. We got another episode. I don't know what we're talking about yet. It might be... Actually, no, I'm not going to say that because I don't think that's this weekend. But yeah, we have another episode, same time next week, and we will see you guys next time. Peace out.
Later.